Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
I thought love was supposed to be forever, but that's what they don't tell you, right? The lies, the betrayal, the moment you realize the child you've been raising isn't even yours. One DNA test, and my life shattered. She stole everything, my family, my future, my soul, and then she dragged me through hell, screaming lies I never thought possible. I was a monster, she said, but now I'm the one pulling the strings. She'll know what real pain feels like, soon. I sat in my chair and reread the email from the landlord. Dear Mr. James Matthews, I am writing to inform you that you have not paid your weekly rent of $270 on time repeatedly. You now owe $4,320. You have 7 days to pay this full amount, Oregon. You will have to move out. Sincerely, Jonathan Blake. My head dropped to the desk as I fought back tears. I managed to hold them back for the most part. This past year had been really hard for me. My wife, after 2 years of marriage, had given birth to our first child, a lovely baby boy. Even though I didn't see much of myself in him, I tried to focus on being a dad. My father, excited about being a grandparent, decided to make a family tree. He contacted a company that does family history tests and bought tests for all of us, including my son. We waited a whole month for the results, a month during which my wife revealed something heartbreaking about our son's parentage. With proof in hand, I packed my bags and stayed in a motel for a week. Thankfully, our money had been kept separate. She took everything from our shared savings, but I still had my own funds. But then came the lawsuit. Claims about lies and her choices took me by surprise. In court, I felt like the bad guy. After 6 months, a week in jail, and all my savings spent, the claims against me were dropped. Still, being proven innocent didn't help me get my job back. My parents, who had helped me at first, backed away when tragedy struck. 4 months ago, they were in a car accident caused by a drunk driver on their way to see me. My mom struggled for 8 days before she passed away, and my dad followed her 2 days later. They didn't have much money, and with their house mostly owned by the bank, I could not argue about their will while I was away. I had to watch their things be packed up, sold, and donated. The few odd jobs I found kept me going, but they didn't bring any real stability. I had been dreading the day I would get this email, and now it felt like everything was falling apart. A quick check of my bank account showed that I was out of money. That realization made me laugh for a moment before tears threatened to spill. I gathered my thoughts as I stepped into the shower. The water was lukewarm, but it did the job. When I got dressed, I made sure to take just the basics: my phone, which I couldn't use to call anyone, and my wallet for my ID. I knew there was a soup kitchen nearby where I could get a meal. There might even be a chance to find some work for the day, which would help a bit. Stepping outside, I closed and locked the door behind me. If it weren't for my laptop, I wouldn't have bothered. "James Matthews?" a voice called from behind me. I turned and saw a tall woman in a business suit. "I'm broke and about to lose my home. I can't help you with anything," I said, feeling annoyed. I started walking downstairs, not caring what she wanted. I was facing hard times and felt like I had nothing left. However, I was surprised to hear her heels clicking on the stairs behind me. I thought about just leaving. "Mr. Matthews, please wait," she called out, coming from the stairwell. I turned back and glared at her. "What do you want? I have nothing." At that moment, 2 men stepped forward and held my arms. "Let him go, gentlemen," the woman ordered, her voice firm. As they released me, I looked at her closely. She was a little shorter than me, with light brown hair that framed her face nicely. Under different circumstances, I might have appreciated her looks. "Can we get on with this? The soup kitchen is closing soon and I need to get there," I said grumpily. "You took a family tree DNA test recently, didn't you?" she asked seriously. I sighed. "Yes, that's what turned my life upside down. Why do you want to know?" "Mr. Matthews, the challenges you've faced were caused by someone who did you wrong. Your DNA test led me to you." I stared at her, unsure of how to react. "My name is Cassandra Lays, and I was the assistant to Boris Carmichael." I rubbed my eyes, trying to remember the name, but it didn't ring a bell. "Should I know who that is?" "If you did, we would have spoken a long time ago. No, the Foundation paid a good amount to find you, Mr. Matthews." It was only through a last attempt to compare his DNA with public records that we found his last living heir. Me? I asked, still a bit confused. Yes, you, Mr. Matthews. We will need to do a legal DNA test to confirm, but we are sure you are the heir. I stood there puzzled. After a moment, I asked, what do I need to do? And what if you're wrong? Mr. Matthews, if we are incorrect and you are not Boris Carmichael's heir, I've arranged for $30,000 to be deposited into your account. We will also offer you a job for your peace of mind. If you are the heir, you'll receive your inheritance. I shook my head. This felt too good to be true, but I couldn't argue with her offer. If this was some trick, they would be disappointed, and I was maybe taking a chance. Yet, if I really was the heir, it could change everything for me. $30,000 and a job just for taking a DNA test I had already done. What do we do now? I asked. The woman smiled. Unless you want some soup, I think we should find a place to eat. Do you have better clothes? Well, I looked at what I was wearing. No, this is all I have. I sold everything valuable while I was in prison. Okay, she frowned. I guess we need to find a place that works for your outfit. One of the assistants opened the back door of the limousine and the woman got in. He looked at me quietly until I understood he wanted me to follow. Once I sat down, I felt out of place. It wasn't just the limousine, it was the nice seats compared to my old clothes. The woman was on the phone, making reservations at a restaurant I had never heard of. After hanging up, she called someone else and continued talking. I closed my eyes and relaxed into the soft seat, the first comfortable chair I'd had since before prison. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, the assistant was gently shaking my shoulder. I blinked and he stepped back. Sorry, sir. Miss Lays asked me to wake you. She's already inside, he said. I rubbed my eyes and got out of the car. Thanks, I appreciate the smooth ride. I had a good nap. He nodded slightly, and I turned to see where we had stopped. I had definitely never been here before. It was far from where I lived. This restaurant looked fancy, with everyone dressed in nice clothes, and I felt a bit out of my league. Miss Lays was at the front, talking to the concierge. The man looked at me with a frown, but Miss Lays said something that made him nod. Please, follow me, he said. Miss Lays turned and walked in, and I followed a few steps behind. Even when I was married, we never ate at places like this. Everything was shiny or elegant, and the only colors were shades of off-white, except for a few flowers on the tables. We headed to what looked like private rooms at the back of the restaurant. The concierge led us into a small, cozy room with just one table. The light was soft, mostly from lit candles on the table. The concierge helped Miss Lays sit first and barely pulled my chair out before I could sit. He left 2 menus on the table and bowed as he walked out. Miss Lays? My apologies, Mr. Matthews. You can call me Cassandra. Okay, Cassandra, please call me James. But, why did you bring me here? I don't feel like I belong, especially in these clothes. Ah, yes, that's why we have a private dining room. They wouldn't let you in otherwise. Though I didn't understand why they would bother, this place seemed quite fancy for what it offered. I looked around at the shiny glasses, silverware, and plates with gold edges. If this was what she thought was fancy, I could only imagine how rich this Boris person was for his assistant to notice such details. I dropped the subject and picked up the menu. I was surprised by the high prices, and half of it wasn't even in English. The concierge walked in with a bottle of wine and some glasses. I ignored him while he opened the bottle and poured our drinks. I heard Cassandra place her order, which brought me back to reality. Looking up at the man, I wasn't sure what I wanted. Could I just get a good steak? I asked. He looked a bit surprised. With chips and gravy, I suppose? He replied, almost teasingly. I felt much happier at the thought. Yes, please, a big steak, medium rare with chips and gravy. The concierge nodded and left. Cassandra shot me a curious look, but quickly hid it when I noticed her. Don't worry, Mr. James. We'll help you get used to all of this in time. I smiled and accepted that this meal was definitely outside of my comfort zone. Sitting on the edge of a large bed, I found myself staring at the wall. Today had been quite eye-opening. After dinner, where the concierge hardly paid attention to me, Cassandra wanted to get me fitted for new clothes. Now that she knew my sizes, she ordered me some suits. Apparently, I'd need them for my new job, regardless of how things worked out, and it was all paid for by her company. The last thing for the night was the DNA test. She had arranged for a place to stay open until midnight to take a blood sample. She wanted to be completely sure. That was another uncomfortable part. Until the DNA test results came back, she wouldn't discuss the company I would inherit. Every time I asked her for details, she shut me down. All I gathered was that most of it was in Europe, judging by her accent. Where exactly, I wasn't sure, but it was clear she wasn't from around here. With those thoughts swirling in my mind, it took me a while to finally fall asleep. When I woke up, the sun was rising over the horizon. The view from my penthouse suite was fantastic. Yet being in a penthouse suite kind of brought me down. Last night had been tiring. From the moment Cassandra persuaded me to get into that fancy car, I felt out of place. Seeing how the upper class treated the working class was very eye-opening. Cassandra just moved through the crowd and made demands. Nobody questioned her when she talked about her resources. With a sigh, I stood up and slipped on the clothes I had worn the night before. According to the tailor, my first suit wouldn't be ready until noon. I wished I had a clean shirt and some jeans to change into. After dressing, I thought it was time to find breakfast. A nice place like this must have something to eat. When I opened the door to my room, I saw one of the security staff sitting on the couch. It was unusual to see someone in that position looking so relaxed. As soon as he noticed me, his expression changed, and he stood up. "No, it's all right. Stay seated," I said quickly. He hesitated before sitting back down. "Thank you, sir." "Just call me James," I replied, walking toward him and reaching out my hand. He shook my hand gently. "I'm Ben. Is there a problem with the room, James?" I smiled, feeling a bit better. "Not at all. I'm just looking for breakfast and wish I had a nice pair of jeans to put on." Ben considered me for a moment and then nodded. "I'll make a call. The concierge can help." "Thanks, Ben," I said, smiling. We sat together and watched the morning news. There were stories about celebrity weddings and silly antics. After the weather update, there was a soft knock on the door. Before Ben could stand, I opened it myself. A young woman was standing there, looking a bit frowning. I stayed quiet and just gestured for her to come in. She wheeled in a small cart with 2 covers on top. On another shelf was a bag from a fancy store. She revealed our meals, some fancy eggs Benedict, and then put the bag on the floor before leaving quickly without saying anything. I looked at Ben, and he shrugged. "Shouldn't there be breakfast for your partner and Cassandra?" I asked, handing Ben a plate. He took it with a grin, but shook his head. "Greg and I work different shifts. I work mornings and sleep early, while Greg takes the night shift. Miss Lays usually sleeps late and doesn't like to be disturbed." I nodded and took my food back to the couch, with Ben right behind me. We sat down comfortably and enjoyed our meals. Honestly, they were the best eggs Benedict I'd ever tasted, but I didn't want to think about how expensive they probably were. After we finished, I collected our plates and set them back on the table. Grabbing my bag, I decided to take a shower before trying on my new clothes. Unfortunately, they weren't the comfy jeans and t-shirt I was hoping for. The undergarments were nice, but the jeans were tight around my legs. The shirt was similar, fitting closely. At the bottom of the bag were some soft socks and a pair of leather shoes. I sighed. This probably cost a lot. I just wanted a $10 pair of shoes from the nearby stores and a simple cotton t-shirt to go with them. As I came back into the room, I saw Ben still sitting on the couch. When he saw me, his eyebrows went up, and I playfully threw my finger at him. I went to the fridge and grabbed a chocolate bar before sitting down again. "I feel like I'm wearing a big bag," I complained. Ben couldn't help it and started to laugh. Soon enough, I joined him, but then Cassandra's bedroom door opened. Ben immediately stopped laughing, standing still with a blank look as he moved to the wall. "What is all this noise?" Cassandra said with a frown. "Sorry, miss," Ben replied quickly. "I made a comment with Mr. Matthew." I stared wide-eyed as Cassandra looked at him with annoyance. "Sorry, Cassandra, I got him talking and we got carried away. I didn't mean to be loud." Cassandra then turned to me, her face a bit softer. "Please, James, try to be more polite in the future. Some of us need our rest." Turning back to her room, she added, "I'll be needing breakfast in 20 minutes. "Right away, miss," Ben said in a flat voice. Ben thanked me with a nod and pulled out his phone to order for Cassandra. I settled back on the couch watching a sports report when Cassandra came back. She sat beside me and took the remote. Changing the channel to one that played music, she finally looked at me. "That outfit looks much better on you. Don't worry, I'll pay for it from my account." "Better than those clothes you had on yesterday." I nodded, not quite sure how to reply. What I wore yesterday wasn't the best, but it was comfortable. Did you sleep okay, Cassandra?" She sighed. "No, I really don't like sleeping in places like this. The bed was far too hard for my taste." I glanced at Ben, who rolled his eyes. It took all my willpower not to smile, but I kept a serious face as I told her, "That's unfortunate. I hope you can get back to your own bed soon." "I hope so too. We should have our results back this evening. If you're the right match, we should be home by morning." This time, I couldn't hold back a sigh. "You're not going to tell me where that is, are you?" "I'm sorry, James. I really am. But I can't share the details just yet," she said, sounding firm. "What if I want to know?" I asked, feeling frustrated about not getting answers. Cassandra looked confused for the first time. "Why would you want to know?" I turned to her, making sure I had her attention. "Just yesterday afternoon, I was out of money and worried about where I would sleep. Now you're telling me I might be the heir to someone I've never met. From your accent and manner, I can guess that he was probably rich and from Europe. But you won't tell me anything about who I'm supposed to inherit from, why I'm inheriting, or where I'm going." Cassandra chuckled softly. "You won't be sent anywhere. If you really are the heir, you'll be flying in a private jet." "This is what I'm talking about. How can I be sure this isn't a trick?" Cassandra's expression changed as she thought about what to say. "James, I'm sorry, I can't give you any details right now. You'll understand soon enough." I shrugged. "Okay, just let me know when you find out." With that, I turned and walked out the front door, heading to the elevator. Since I was on the penthouse floor, the private elevator opened as soon as I pressed the button. Once inside, I pressed the button for the ground floor and saw Cassandra's surprised face as the doors closed. When the doors opened, I walked out, ignoring everyone, even the concierge, who didn't seem to recognize me as I went past. It took me most of the day to get home. I spent over an hour finding a road I knew, and then followed it for another hour before I saw a landmark I recognized. By the time I passed the soup kitchen, they were getting ready for dinner. Walking in, I got a few curious looks from the regulars, but I just shrugged and said, "Don't ask." An hour later, I climbed the stairs to my apartment. The familiar smell of the hallway reminded me of how my life was changing. "You must be Greg," I said, offering my hand to the man. "Sir," he replied, shaking my hand firmly. "Don't tell me she's inside." "No, sir," Greg smiled. "She's busy organizing flights. We're leaving in an hour." "Oh?" I said softly. "Is that all?" "No, sir," Greg said seriously. "I was sent to bring you to the hangar. Miss Lays expected you to come back here." "Oh," I said quietly. "So, I'm the one, right?" "Officially, you need to talk to Cassandra first, sir. But yes, we got confirmation an hour ago. You are the heir to Boris Carmichael." "Great, so where are we going?" I asked, unlocking my front door. Inside, I grabbed a few things that meant a lot to me. Greg held the bag open while I put in my laptop, a photo of my parents, and my divorce papers. I handed the bag to Greg, who closed it for me, and then I slung it over my shoulder. "We're heading north. Your estate has a private airfield near a small mountain range. We should be home by morning," Greg said firmly. I nodded and stepped outside. This time, I didn't lock the door, but Greg shut it behind me. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, a limousine pulled up. Ben was driving and nodded politely at me. Greg opened the door for me. I climbed into the back, and the sound of a champagne cork popping surprised me. "Congratulations, Mr. Matthews. Or is it Carmichael?" Cassandra said cheerfully. I blinked, a bit taken aback. She had a couple of glasses in one hand and a bottle of champagne in the other. Her sparkly dress briefly caught my eye as I accepted a glass from her. I reached out for the glasses, and she filled them both. One glass spilled a little, and she chuckled softly as she handed it to me. I took a sip and smiled, enjoying the moment. "I had these flown in from France," she explained. "Very expensive, but worth it," she added with enthusiasm. I kept my thoughts to myself about the brand I liked that only cost $20, but I was feeling tense, so after a few sips, I leaned back in my seat. "So, are you going to tell me more about all this now?" I asked, still feeling a bit down about the situation. Cassandra let out a sigh. Really, James, you need to relax. You're him. There's a form to sign on the plane to accept your titles, and everything is yours. After that, it's all training to help you get up to speed. For now, I suggest you enjoy yourself a bit. Following her advice, I just sipped my champagne until we got to the airport. Moments after we parked, the door opened. Cassandra quickly climbed out, still holding the bottle. I followed her, trying to ignore the curious look Ben was giving me. I couldn't help but gasp. The sleek silver Gulfstream in front of me was stunning, just like Cassandra's dress. I moved slowly behind her as she stumbled a little going up the stairs. I managed to enter without a hitch and caught her finishing the rest of the bottle in one go. Lowering the bottle, she turned to me with a playful wink. I watched as she adjusted her dress while stepping through a door at the back. I remembered how tricky things could get in moments like these, so I felt relieved when Ben and Greg followed me on board. Ben, can I ask a quick favor? Of course, James, he replied promptly. Just stand there and watch me for a moment, I said. I walked toward the doorway Cassandra had gone through and peeked inside. Sure enough, there was a bed, and Cassandra had fallen asleep, holding the bottle under her arm. Ben, come here, I need a witness, I called quietly. I waited for Ben to arrive before entering the room. I quickly took the bottle and set it aside. Then I covered her with a blanket to make sure she was comfortable during takeoff. After quietly leaving the room, I nodded my thanks to Ben and took a seat near the front of the cabin. Less than 20 minutes later, we were in the air. Ben, Greg, and I shared a quiet drink before I settled into my seat for a quick rest. It felt like the moment I closed my eyes, I was shaken awake. I opened my eyes to find it was Ben. "We've landed, sir," he said softly. I groaned and stretched, feeling better. I stood up and pulled out my phone. It was just after 3 a.m. Relieved that I was still where I expected to be, I followed Ben outside. It was still very dark, and the stars shone brighter than I had seen in years. I could hear someone in the distance being helped, which felt a bit strange. A short distance away, I noticed Cassandra, who was being assisted into a car by someone I didn't know. Ben was leading me to another vehicle. Before I could ask, he cleared his throat. "Miss Mary asked for a second vehicle. She didn't want to bother you while Miss Lays is not feeling well." I shrugged and climbed into the front seat of the black four-wheel drive that Ben pointed to. As I buckled my seatbelt, Ben got into the driver's seat next to me. I had a small feeling that I had just passed some sort of invisible test in his eyes. "So, what can you tell me about this place?" I asked as we started driving. The road was hard-packed gravel, which made for a slow but smooth ride. "We're heading to the second gate. Your new home is quite private. There are 3 fences and a stone wall around the house. It's meant to keep people out and protect the animals." Animals? One of Boris's hobbies was horse breeding. "You now own a small group of Clydesdales," Ben said with a hint of a smile. I laughed, curious about what kind of person Boris had been. "But the property is divided into different areas, some for fun, some for studying, and some for work. Is there more you can tell me about them?" I asked. Ben slowly shook his head. "Sorry, James, I'm just a bodyguard. I know there's a radar station for weather events and a building where Boris was working on something for the military. Most of his business was in banks and medicines, as far as I know." That information made my mind race. Whatever kind of person Boris had been, I was about to take on some big responsibilities. I hoped I could handle it or find someone who could guide me. After passing 2 guard posts and an electronic gate, I finally saw my new home. Since Cassandra had left the car earlier, it was just Ben and me as we arrived. It looked less like a home and more like a mansion, 3 stories tall with nice decorations and hedges around it. The driveway was a big paved circle, large enough for big vehicles. Considering the size of the property, it probably had welcomed many large transports in the past. The lights were still on, and someone was standing in the light coming from the open front door. "That's the butler," Ben said as we walked closer. "He can seem a bit tough at first, but he's reliable. Boris hired him years ago and left him some company stock in his will." "Okay," I replied, noting that information. "What's his name?" Ben shook his head. "Sorry, I don't think Miss Lays knows his name either. You can just call him Frank." I nodded my thanks and walked toward what I now saw was an older man. The expression on his face reminded me of my last visit to the principal's office, but I smiled and offered my hand anyway. "Hi, you must be Frank. I'm James," I said. Frank seemed surprised as I reached out, but he quickly took my hand. "A pleasure, sir. If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your room." "I'll leave you here. See you in a little while," Ben said, heading off in another direction. I nodded at him and then turned to Frank, who was watching me closely. He motioned for me to follow. The main foyer was impressive, filled with beautiful artwork and tall wooden pillars. The whole place looked like a grand piece of art, and Frank led me up a beautiful staircase. The stairs split on the second level, going up to the third, but Frank turned left. The rooms are arranged in groups. The first floor has the kitchens and staff quarters. The second floor is half family and guest rooms and half business rooms. The upper level has the observatory and library, which overlook the pool and training area. Beyond that is the barn. I nodded as he spoke. This place was amazing. Along the way, a series of portraits caught my eye. Some were very old, showing how the family changed over the years. The last picture showed a balding, slightly heavy man with a serious look. "Frank." "Yes, sir. That is Boris Carmichael. If I may speak freely, his looks did not match his actions in life. He never accepted failure." I nodded and turned away from the stern face on the wall. I hoped my portrait would look more cheerful. As we walked down a hallway, Frank stopped before a large door. Carefully pulling it open, he gestured for me to enter with a small bow. Stepping into the room felt like going back in time. Beautiful landscapes were painted on the walls, and heavy drapes covered what seemed to be the biggest window I had ever seen. The large four-poster bed in the center was bigger than a king size, and there was a small dining table for two. "Sir, through that door," Frank said, pointing to another door across the room. "You will find the bathroom. The thermostat is by the door along with the light switch." I shook Frank's hand with a polite smile. "Thank you, Frank." Frank returned the smile and said, "You're welcome, sir. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to get some rest now. There's a call button on the nightstand if you need anything." With that, the elderly man quietly left, closing the door behind him. As I took a short walk around the room, I heard a knock on the door. I opened it to see Ben standing there. "Hey, James, I brought you a change of clothes," Ben said, handing over a large bag. "And I also need you to sign this form." I placed the bag on the floor and glanced at the form. It was just to confirm my identity. There were DNA results attached, but I didn't pay much attention to those. I signed the form quickly and gave it back to Ben, who was holding a pen. "Thanks. Miss Lays would have been upset if she didn't get this tomorrow," Ben said, sighing. Well, more upset than usual. "Is she always like this?" I asked. Ben shook his head. "Not really. I've seen her drink before, but not like that. She's usually more quiet." I nodded. "Thanks, Ben. I'll see you in a few hours." Ben gave a small nod and walked away. After closing the door, I decided to take a shower. The bathroom was surprisingly large, almost the size of my whole apartment. In the middle was a huge, sculpted bathtub, big enough for a group of people. Next to it was a spacious, open shower with multiple shower heads on every side except the entry. There was even a retractable bench built into the far wall. Near the shower stood a sink, a mirror, and simple yet fancy toiletries. Something else caught my eye in the room. A small booth-like structure with several holes in the walls and a single red button inside. Curious, I stepped in and pressed the button. A gentle whirring started, and soon warm air surrounded me. It was like being wrapped in a soft breeze, explaining why there were no towels nearby. I turned back toward the bath and noticed a small hidden area behind it. It was just as stylish as the rest of the room, but it turned out to be a toilet with a built-in bidet. There was no toilet paper, which was something I would need to get used to. After getting ready, I stepped into the shower. It was digitally controlled. I pressed a button, and the water began flowing at a perfect temperature, gradually adjusting to what felt just right. A soft beep caught my ear, and I looked at the blinking control panel. I reached over and pressed the up button twice, adjusting the temperature. Next, I needed soap, but I found some nozzles built into the wall. The first had lemon-scented body wash, the second was shampoo, and the third was conditioner. A little while later, I was clean and feeling good. I pressed the button to stop the water, and it turned off right away. With a smile, I stepped out of the shower and moved to the drying room. I closed my eyes and enjoyed the fresh air around me. After 30 seconds, I came out completely dry. At the sink, I found a toothbrush and some toothpaste. After a quick brushing, I left the bathroom. The bag of clothes was still by the door to my room. It felt strange walking such a distance without anything on. I grabbed the bag and took out its contents. Inside was a smart outfit: dark gray pants, a belt, a white shirt, plus more socks, and a pair of leather shoes. A quick look at my phone showed it was almost 6 a.m., so I thought it wasn't worth trying to sleep any longer. I dressed quickly and left my room to explore. I took a walk around the second level. Not knowing if any rooms were occupied, I didn't open any doors, but I saw many paintings of different people. I realized I didn't even know how I was related to Boris, as I passed a painting of a lovely young woman. When I got to the stairs, I decided to go down to the ground floor. Frank had mentioned kitchens, and I was ready for breakfast. What surprised me was a sweet voice echoing in the hallways. I felt curious to find out where it was coming from. The song, sung by a woman, wasn't in English, but it was truly beautiful. Lucky for me, the sound led me to a door marked kitchen. I gently opened the door and saw a young man stirring a pot on a large stove and a young woman chopping vegetables for breakfast. They didn't notice me at first, so I stood quietly and listened to the woman's song. That was until the young man caught sight of me. "Oh, good morning, sir," he said quickly, standing up straight. The young woman stopped and turned to me with a small bow. She was lovely and a bit shorter than Cassandra, with a warm presence that made her even more charming. Her short brown hair was neatly styled, and her blue eyes looked down the moment they met mine. "I'm very sorry to have disturbed you," I said quickly. "I was just looking for breakfast when I heard you singing." I hesitated. The young woman turned red but managed to say, "I'm sorry, sir. I'll try to be quieter." Her voice reminded me of Cassandra's. My expression softened at her words, and I could see her shift from embarrassment to worry. "No, please don't stop. Your singing was beautiful. I'm happy to finally see who sings like that." She blushed again, but then the young man spoke up. "I need those vegetables soon." The young woman quickly replied, "Sorry, sir. I have to get back to work." She turned and started chopping vegetables with surprising speed, almost as impressive as her voice. "Breakfast will be brought to your room, sir," the young man said. "Is this your usual wake-up time?" I nodded at him. "Yes, about now. I got up a bit earlier after last night." "I'll have your meal ready at the same time we make breakfast for the staff," he smiled. "Do you cook just for me?" I asked. The young man paused. "Miss Lays and Mr. Gregg usually wake up later, so their meals are prepared at a different time." That made sense. "Just make whatever you all eat. There's no need to make something special for me." Suddenly, there was a loud clang followed by a gasp, which caught my attention. I turned to see the young woman picking up a large metal bowl. "I need to wash this again," she said, moving quickly to the other side of the kitchen. I nodded my thanks to the young man and decided to leave. If the kitchens were here, the staff rooms were probably on the other side, so I didn't head that way. I figured everyone needed their privacy, and I didn't want to disturb them. I decided to check out the pool and exercise yard. Behind the stairs, I found some big glass doors that opened automatically when I got close. The instant they opened, warm, humid air surrounded me. Frank had really downplayed how nice this place was. The pool was huge, almost Olympic-sized, and was inside a lovely greenhouse. As the sun rose, I could see outdoor furniture, trees, and some tropical birds around. After a quick walk near the pool, I decided to head back and wait for breakfast. In a few minutes, I retraced my steps back to my room. When I got there, I started unpacking. I only had a photo of my parents to put on the nightstand and my laptop to set up. While searching the room, I found a hidden power outlet near an armchair. It seemed like a good spot, so I set up my temporary workspace, even though I couldn't really work or go online. With a sigh, I looked for internet connections. There was one available, but I didn't have the password. Knock, knock. I looked up quickly. Putting my laptop aside, I moved to the door, ready for the morning meal. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see the young woman from the kitchen. "I've brought your breakfast, sir," she said softly, not looking at me. "Thank you," I replied, stepping back. She hurried past me and placed the tray on the small table. It held a simple meal of scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast. "This looks great, thank you," I said with a smile. The young woman looked up at me and smiled back. "If that's all, sir," she said quietly. "Just one more thing. What's the Wi-Fi password?" Her face turned slightly red as she replied, "It's FBI Surveillance Van 1. All one word, no capitals except FBI." I paused for a moment, surprised. "Are you serious?" I asked. She swayed a little before shaking her head. "No, sir. Ben changes the password every week for security and makes it something easy to remember." I laughed, missing the quick smile that appeared on her face. By the time I regained my focus, she was already leaving. I wondered what her name was. A few hours later, as I deleted another email from my old landlord, Cassandra knocked and opened my bedroom door. She looked a bit pale, but was still nicely dressed. She walked in with a bottle of water and a stack of papers. I quickly went over to help her with the papers, and she gave me a thankful smile. I placed the stack on the table, and then Cassandra cleared her throat. "Mr. Matthews, I need to apologize," she began. I turned to look at her, unsure of what she meant. "My actions last night were not right for my position. I hope I didn't offend you. Also, I apologize for my sister's behavior. She should have acted more appropriately." Now I was really confused. "I won't say I've never done something silly when I've had too much to drink. I guess I just try not to make it a habit," I said, hoping I was saying the right thing. "But about your sister, I'm honestly not sure what you mean." Cassandra paused for a moment, watching me closely. "My sister, Miss Mary, brought you breakfast and acted a bit differently in the kitchen, didn't she?" Now things were starting to click. Of course, they would have different names to avoid confusion. Cassandra was Miss Lays, while her sister, who had a lesser role, was called Miss Mary. Cassandra noticed my expression and realized I understood. "Oh, yes. She has a lovely singing voice. I think I surprised her in the kitchen. Please tell her I'm sorry. My breakfast didn't go much better, but it was still nice." Cassandra kept an eye on me, taking a small sip of water to hide her expression for a moment. "All right, James. If you'd like to sit down, I'll help you understand your new life." I smiled and pulled out a chair for her. She smiled back, and I took my seat. The next couple of hours felt a bit long and a little boring. First, I signed a paper that allowed Cassandra to act as my representative, which explained a lot of things I didn't understand before. Then we talked about my shares in the Bank of France. It turned out that Boris and his previous partners had invested in many different areas, like banks, drug companies, hotels, and even airports. I found out I had some ownership in almost everything. Boris seemed particularly interested in green energy. He had put a lot of money into companies in that field while moving away from coal and oil investments. Cassandra said that the stocks he kept were enough to make a difference if necessary, although he preferred to stay out of those industries. I liked his thinking and decided I wanted to do the same. The next form I needed to sign was a simple bank transfer approval. It didn't take long for me to notice that the bank balance was much larger than I expected. This explained why I had a security team. The last form was something a bit different. "This is a non-disclosure agreement. We have a military research center on the property that is not currently active, but it may resume work if you sign this," Cassandra explained. I quickly looked over the document. It had a lot of hard words, but not much clear information. I turned to Cassandra. "What kind of research do they do here?" Cassandra's expression changed slightly. "A better question might be what they don't study," she said seriously. "Chemical, biological, and radioactive research is not allowed. Last year, they told us their work helped create a new kind of armor. They didn't give details, but they hire many experts." "I can agree to that," I said, signing the last papers. As I handed the signed documents back to Cassandra, there was a soft knock on the door. Before I could stand up to open it, Cassandra said, "Come in." The door opened, and Miss Mary stepped in, pushing a small cart. "Your lunch, missin', sir," she said quietly, not looking up. Cassandra watched as the young woman set out our meals, which looked like an elegant version of a Caesar salad. I couldn't identify every ingredient in the dish, but it had chicken, bacon, croutons, a creamy dressing, and fresh greens. Just like that, Miss Mary packed up her cart and left with a quick nod from Cassandra. I paused to watch Cassandra as she started to pick at her salad before I joined in. I noticed the quality of the food but found my mind wandering to other thoughts. "So about your sister," I began. Cassandra looked up at me. "Do you two have a close bond away from work? I'd like to know if you're keeping things professional around me." Cassandra hesitated, choosing her words with care. "My sister and I are very close. We came here together and work hard at our jobs." Many questions filled my mind. I sensed there was more to her story, but she seemed reluctant to share. "That's understandable. What's important is that you both are happy. By the way, how is the staff?" Cassandra frowned slightly at my question. "What do you mean?" "The staff, are they okay? Do they have what they need? Are they treated fairly?" I expressed my worries. "Just remember, I didn't grow up with much. A few days ago, I wasn't sure what would happen next. It's important to me that everyone feels comfortable and supported." For a moment, Cassandra's smile faded before she answered. "James, I'll ask Frank to check in with them." "No, I'd rather meet with them one by one," I replied. "Okay, I can do that," Cassandra said, giving me a look that suggested I had something on my face. "When do you want to start?" I smiled back. "I'm free now, aren't I?" Cassandra showed me around the second floor. After I got to know the layout of the meeting, dining, and display rooms, she brought me to my office. Like everything in this house, it was impressive. The walls displayed beautiful paintings of various landscapes. A big bookshelf held books in different languages. Some I recognized and others I didn't. I made a note to check out the library later, thinking these might be Boris's favorite books. As I walked around the room, admiring the artwork, I even chuckled when I discovered a giant globe that opened to reveal a hidden spot filled with scotch. But in the center of the room, in front of a tall window, there was a large wooden desk and a leather chair. I sat down and noticed Cassandra looking a bit uncomfortable as she stood in the middle of the room. "Come, take a seat." "Let's start with you," I said with a smile. Cassandra still seemed nervous but came over and sat in front of me. "Now, what is your role here?" She straightened up in her chair and took a deep breath. "Sir, I am both your personal assistant and lawyer. While your business has its own legal team, I represent you personally, and my job is to advise you for your best interests." I nodded. That was basically what I understood. She was my main advisor. Any decisions, issues, and ideas came through her. This was both good and a bit hard. She seemed really skilled at her job, and I believed she would keep doing well. But this also meant that anyone who found it hard to talk to her would have some trouble. I felt more motivated to meet with the team. "So, how's everything going for you? Do you have any problems? Are you paid fairly? How can I help?" "Sir, James, I have access to company accounts and a credit card. I don't get a salary, but that's okay." She stopped speaking. It was clear that there was something she wasn't sharing, but I didn't think I'd get a clear answer from her. "Okay, let's start with this. If you don't have one, get yourself a bank account. Then I want you to write an employment agreement for the next 12 months, with options to renew. I want you to figure out what you believe your value is, and I'll give you a proper salary. You can still use the company credit card for work-related expenses." Cassandra gave me a strange smile and nodded. "I'll take care of that today, James." "Great. If that's all for now, could you send in Frank? After him, have Ben and Greg come in. I'll decide who to talk to next after Frank," I instructed. Cassandra stood up slowly and gave me a curious smile before heading out. From her reaction, I guessed I was about to make some big changes. I hoped they would be positive. I didn't want any problems. From the beginning, I just wanted a comfortable life, and I could at least ensure that for the people who worked here. A soft knock signaled my next visitor. I stood up, went to the door, and opened it. As expected, Frank was there, looking a bit surprised. "Frank, come in. I'd like to have a chat," I said with a smile. "First, I know there's scotch in the globe. If you can find some glasses, I'd be happy to share a drink with you." Frank looked surprised for a moment before quietly saying, "Sir, those bottles are worth more than I earn in a month." I just shrugged. "Well, let's just have one then." I smiled and took my seat. I watched Frank as he opened a compartment at the bottom and took out 2 glasses. He opened the main part, poured an amber liquid into the glasses, and brought them over. He handed me a glass and sat down. I took a sniff and then a sip, making a note to find out where to buy more. It was smooth and had a warm feel to it. "Wow, I've never tried something like this before," I said softly. Yeah, it's very nice, Frank said, lowering his glass. I asked you in first because I need you to help get things started. I'm interviewing everyone who works here. What do you do here? Are you happy with your pay? Is there anything I can do to help you in your job? Can you start bringing people in after I talk to Ben and Greg? Frank looked at me for a moment and took another sip of his drink. Sir, I am in charge of the household. While Miss Lays takes care of your investments, I manage everything here. I'm happy with what I earn, but I will need to find someone to take my place in the next few years. My wife and I aren't as healthy as we used to be. Wife? I asked. Does she work here too? Yes, sir, Frank replied. We met when she was a gardener. As a wedding gift, Boris paid for her to go to veterinary school. Now she takes care of the horses. That made me smile. Boris sounds like a good man. He was, sir. Strict yet always fair. He valued loyalty. That's why many of us stayed after he passed. Miss Lays made sure everyone had what they needed. After Boris passed, his accounts were frozen, but we have since received everything we were owed, and no one is worse off for it. I figured it was a good time to ask, how did Boris pass away? He had a stroke, sir. He passed before we could get him to the airfield and was declared gone when the paramedics arrived. Several staff members, including me, are trained to help in emergencies. We keep supplies on hand to help someone until we can get them to a hospital. Do we have a helicopter or something? I asked, thinking it might be quicker for emergencies. Frank shook his head. Unfortunately not. Boris didn't trust them, even though we have a place for one. There's a pad behind the house. Boris wanted to turn it into a tennis court. I chuckled. All right, maybe talk to Cassandra. I think I'm wealthy enough to consider a helicopter, especially for emergencies. Frank smiled as he finished his drink. Thank you, sir. If that's all, I'll be on my way. Oh, can you bring in a couple more glasses and let Ben and Greg come in before you leave? Frank nodded and did as I asked. With a final, polite smile, he left the room, and Ben and Greg entered right after. The next few hours were filled with talking, laughing, and smiles. Ben and Greg were good company but wanted a third person for their team. I understood their reasoning and decided to let them handle the recruitment and training. A young man from the kitchen named Kenneth asked if he could update the kitchen appliances. I told him to speak with Cassandra about it, and he seemed happy. Bork, the head gardener, also asked for something. After a quick chat, he went off to buy new tools and a small tractor. I even met Frank's wife, Margaret, who turned out to be a lovely lady. She was happy with her situation, but mentioned that she might think about retiring in the next 10 years. What surprised me most was seeing Miss Mary, someone I hadn't realized I hadn't seen before. She appeared right in front of me. Please, have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Would you like a drink? I asked. No, thank you, she replied softly. All right, do you know what I've been talking about with everyone? I asked, but she shook her head and looked down. There was something special about her. That's okay, Mary. Can I call you Mary? Yes, sir, she answered shyly. I found myself getting lost in my thoughts about her presence, so I continued. Are you happy here? Do you feel I'm treating you fairly? Is there anything you need? Mary shivered a little before she spoke quietly. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, I said gently. She looked up at me with her big blue eyes. Sir, a day off would be nice. I sighed quietly. I liked Boris, but I started to worry. Are you saying you want a holiday, or do you work every day without breaks? Mary lowered her head before answering quietly. I work every day, sir. Mary, how did you end up in a situation where you work every day? She finally looked at me, and in her eyes I saw a tiny spark of hope. Sir, I don't have a proper agreement. Miss Lays helps me with what I need. In return, I worked hard for Mr. Carmichael and now for you. I thought about talking about family matters, but decided not to. Mary, starting now, you will only work 5 days a week. I'll also pay you for your work. Your sister can still help you with items you may need for your job. But I want you to have your own money, all right? I heard her whisper a small thank you before she rushed out of the room, clearly emotional. I was so taken aback by her response that I sat still until Cassandra came to find me. James, did you say something to my sister? She asked carefully. I shrugged slightly. I honestly don't know. I just told her she could only work 5 days a week and that I would pay her for it. Speaking of that, let's make it a rule, a 5-day work week. If we need to hire anyone, just make sure they are trustworthy and pay them fairly. Cassandra nodded. I'll have your dinner sent to your room. Would you like some company tonight? I smiled at the tall brunette. Sure. It's been a long day. It would be nice to talk. Cassandra flashed me a brief smile and left the room. I poured myself another drink and quickly finished it before gathering the empty glasses. On my way to the kitchen, I ran into Frank, who quietly took the glasses from my hands and returned to the kitchen without a word. I shrugged and walked back to my room. I had just settled down with my laptop when I heard a soft knock. I closed my laptop and opened the door to see Cassandra standing there. She was dressed nicely in a blouse and skirt, which caught my eye. I wondered if she had any special intentions, but I was happy to have her company. Good evening, I greeted with a smile. I was looking forward to talking after a long day. Meetings were tiring, but I was relieved to have made it through. Good evening, James. Our food will arrive soon, she replied. I motioned to the table and pulled out a chair for her. Once we were sitting, we chatted about a few things. She thanked me for the days off, which turned into part of our conversation. Our talk paused when Mary came in with our meals. It was evident to Cassandra that I was more focused on her sister, but she kept talking to me anyway. James, I think I need to freshen up. Yours is nicer than mine, Cassandra said. No problem, just be quick, I'm a little tired, I replied sincerely. Before she could say more, I grabbed my laptop and went out the door. After I set up in the office and settled my old landlord, I was ready for bed. I checked my room quietly to make sure everything was okay. I did, however, notice something on the bathroom floor. I decided to ignore it and continued with my night. I took my shower quickly, and by the time I went to bed, I fell asleep almost right away. The next morning, I felt rested. During the night, I had tucked myself under the blanket and slept soundly. My mattress was comfortable and my back felt great, unlike it had in years. I got out of bed, stretched, and put on the same pants from the day before. I thought I should talk to Cassandra about my clothing situation. Knock, knock. Without thinking, I walked to the door and opened it. There stood a very embarrassed Mary. Good morning, I said quickly, rushing to find a shirt. Good morning, sir. Here's your breakfast, she said softly, avoiding eye contact. Mary, what time do the staff usually eat? Now, sir, I'm just delivering yours first. This made me smile. Come on, let's eat with everyone else. Before she could react, I placed my plate back on the cart she had brought in. But, sir. Mary, please call me James, I said with a smile. Now, I don't know where the dining room is. Please show me the way. With a slight frown, she realized I wasn't going to give up the cart. So she turned and began to walk, leading me on. I discovered there were dumbwaiters on this floor. Mary quickly placed my food onto a cart and took it downstairs. She put it in a hidden storage room. I made a note to ask Cassandra about it later. This place must have special rooms or secret spaces. As I walked downstairs, I tried to keep my mind clear. I didn't understand why I was drawn to her, but she seemed so anxious around me. I hoped I could spend more time with her soon. When we passed the kitchen, I recognized a few rooms. A bit farther along, I heard gentle music. We finally reached a dining room at the end of the hall. It was small, but the large table in the center made it feel crowded. The whole staff seemed to be gathered around it, chatting, laughing, and smiling. When I entered with my cart, everyone greeted Mary, but the room fell silent as they noticed me. Good morning, everyone. I hope I'm not interrupting. I enjoy eating with others, I said with a smile. Not at all, sir, Frank replied. As soon as he spoke, 2 chairs were pulled out for Mary and me. Mary started to grab my breakfast, but I kindly told her to get her own meal first. I took a seat next to her and looked around the room. All right, everyone. I don't know how things were done here before, but please just call me James. Treat me just like anyone else. With that, the chatter started again. In a few minutes, laughter filled the room. The only one who seemed a bit uneasy was Mary. She sat very still, blushing as she took small bites of her food. It's okay, Mary. You can relax. I promise I'm not scary. I just wanted some company for breakfast, and I know Cassandra often sleeps in. She nodded slightly and seemed to relax a bit more, but still blushed. I took it as a small victory and focused on my meal. My plate looked much like everyone else's, with plenty of toast, fried eggs, and bacon. The only extra touch was some garnish to make mine look nice. I noticed people glancing at me when I finished my meal and went back for more. I think I surprised a few people with my bacon, egg, and toast sandwich topped with barbecue sauce. After finishing my sandwich, I felt content. Mary was nearly done with her meal, too. "Thank you, Mary. I really enjoyed having breakfast with you," I said with a smile. Her face turned a little pink again. "It was my pleasure, sir." I shook my head. It didn't seem worth it to correct her when she was so nervous. So I decided to help out and picked up some empty plates nearby. Ignoring the curious looks from everyone, I carried the plates back to the kitchen. Kenneth was already inside, working with a dishwasher. "Hey, I have another load for you," I said, giving him a friendly smile. Kenneth hid his surprise with a smile of his own. "Thanks, James. I'll take care of it." I nodded and started to leave, but paused. "Hey, from now on, don't make my meal separate. I'll come down and eat with everyone, okay?" "Sure, whatever you want," he replied, still a bit unsure. With that settled, I decided to take a walk. My first stop was the observatory upstairs. It looked like a big lounge area with a bar on one side and comfy couches arranged in a circle. In the center, there was a small pile of cushions. The ceiling was a big glass dome with thin support beams that looked strong. Satisfied, I moved on to the library. The library reminded me of one from a famous superhero movie. It was large and had shelves filled with books from the floor to the ceiling. A map by the entrance showed the different sections. As I wandered through the shelves, I felt like I was looking through time. Some books seemed hundreds of years old, while others were more recent. I guessed that children had lived in this house not too long ago because I spotted some modern coloring books. I picked a book about horses and settled into a cozy chair by the window. Hours later, I heard a small noise. I looked up just in time to see a girl named Mary quickly move between the shelves. I then heard a thump, followed by a quiet, "Ouch!" Without thinking, I put down my book and hurried after her. She was sitting up when I reached her. "Mary, are you all right?" I asked softly. She flinched a bit at my voice, but I was more concerned than anything. "I'm sorry, sir. I dropped a book and tripped. I'm fine. Please don't worry." I smiled and extended my hand. She took it, and I helped her up. I then picked up the book she had dropped. "Ah, here's your book," I said, surprised to see it was a coloring book. Mary looked at me and the book, then reached out to take it from me. "Thank you, sir." This time, when she hurried away, she didn't trip. I returned to my own book, learning more about horse care, knowing I would be working with them soon. Around noon, Frank came by to let me know some clothes had arrived for me. I thanked him and set my book aside. An hour later, I was clean, dressed in a nice suit, and eating lunch with a cheerful Cassandra. "I still can't believe how great you look all dressed up," she said happily. I smiled back. I used to wear something like this when I worked in finance, but this fits so much better than anything I've worn before. "See, getting it tailored is worth it," she said with a grin. "You really do look good." I thought I might look too skinny, but I probably look better than Greg, I joked, not noticing the brief concern on her face. I put my fork down, leaned back, and stretched. We just finished a creamy pasta dish with tomato sauce. "Thank you for the meal, Cassandra. I'm going to take a walk. I still want to see more of this place," I said with a smile as I stood up. "Oh?" she said with a smile. "Maybe I could come with you?" I replied with a grin. "I want to check out the horses. I've never seen a Clydesdale up close." Cassandra's smile faded a little. "I'll let you go then. I wouldn't want to ruin my shoes." "I'll see you at dinner," I said as I walked past her. I felt like there were many ways to get to the stables, probably without using the main stairs. But I wanted to enjoy the walk. The foyer was quiet as I went down the stairs. I suspected there were lots of hidden paths for the staff. The only people I usually saw besides Mary who brought meals were Cassandra and Frank. Everyone else kept to themselves. As I walked around behind the stairs, I went through the automatic doors again. Inside, it was warm and humid, just like last time. The plants made this place look like a tropical paradise. I thought I saw a colorful bird in a tree by the pool. I decided to ask Frank about getting some swimming shorts. I guessed that even in winter, this place would be nice for swimming. I moved through the electronic doors on the other side and was amazed at what I found. It was an open dining area. There were screens to close it off, but it was open now. Everything was made of dark wood, and it looked beautiful. There was even a full outdoor kitchen. There were tables and chairs for maybe 50 or 60 people to sit comfortably. I could see myself using this space a lot. Beyond the dining area, I spotted the barn. It looked more like a big shed. I even noticed air conditioners built into it. I walked along the path to a small door, but it was locked. Just as I was about to leave, I remembered that Frank's wife, Margaret, worked with the horses. With nothing to lose, I knocked twice on the door. I waited a minute before knocking again. Just as I was about to leave, I heard someone say, "Coming!" I smiled as Margaret opened the door. She looked a bit surprised to see me. "Good afternoon, sir," she said quickly. "Good afternoon. I've been reading about horses and was hoping you could show me around." Margaret's face lit up. "Perfect timing. I have an hour free." An hour later, I had met the main breeding group, the show group, and those we planned to sell. The horses were much bigger than I expected, and I felt nervous at first. But with Margaret's help, I soon found myself gently stroking a strong stallion's mane. After promising to return soon to learn more, I walked back to the house. Stepping outside into the bright afternoon, I grinned and took a deep breath. The air felt fresh up here. Even the sun seemed brighter, maybe due to the cool breeze. With a smile, I turned and started back toward the house. Suddenly, I heard Mary's voice saying angrily, "I didn't like it. Now I don't need you." I frowned. She didn't sound happy, and that made me want to check on her. "Listen, I wasn't asking. I know you need help." "I'm the one who provides it, understand?" A man's voice growled. I started to walk faster. The voices were coming from behind some tall hedges. "No, no more. I'm done being your plaything. Let go of me." Now I was running. I reached the end of the hedgerow and turned to see a small seating area. There was a large white stone fountain and a matching bench. But what caught my attention was a young gardener holding Mary against the hedge. "Listen to me. You will do as I say, just like before." I could not just stand there. I rushed towards him with determination. I pushed him away from Mary and got him to the ground. As I stood, I saw a change in his expression. First surprise, then fear, defeat, acceptance, and finally anger. He punched me unexpectedly, but it didn't knock me down. I ducked under his next swing and hit him in the stomach. He stepped back, giving me a chance to check on Mary, who looked at me in shock. Turning back, I saw he was getting ready to attack again. I pretended to throw a punch, making him raise his hands to defend himself, just as I had hoped. I charged him, using my shoulder to bring him down. We both struggled as I tried to gain control. He threw a punch that surprised me and made everything blurry for a moment. When my vision came back, I saw him taking control. He rolled us over and was now on top with a smile. But I was ready. I grabbed his shirt and pulled him forward unexpectedly. In the rush of it all, I pushed against him and got back on top. With clear focus, I aimed my hits at his open spots. Finally, I landed a strong blow that made him stop moving. Once he was still, I got off him. I turned him onto his side to help him breathe and checked to make sure he was okay. Confident he wasn't in danger, I stood and looked back at Mary. She was still there, staring in shock and seeming unaware of what was happening. I felt worried, but I had to act quickly. I took off my shirt and walked over to her. She didn't respond when I gently held her shoulders. I guided her away from the bushes and wrapped my shirt around her. "Are you all right?" I asked softly. She didn't answer, but a tear fell down her face. "It's going to be okay," I said, pausing to wipe her tear. "I heard everything. He won't hurt you again. I promise." When I said this, she started to cry. "Thank you, sir," she said before breaking down in tears. I held her close as she cried. I knew I needed to act fast. I didn't know how hurt the young man was, but I wanted to make sure he got help. I gently guided Mary away from the scene and towards the house. As we got near the deck area, I began calling out, "Ben, Greg, Frank, is anyone there?" Soon I heard an alarm and saw Frank running towards me with Greg and Ben following. I tried to help Mary sit in a chair, but she held on to me tightly. I figured it was best to keep us together. Moments later, 3 men came over. "Over there by the fountain, one of the young workers. He needs medical help. I want him fired and reported for his actions," I said firmly. Ben hurried towards the bushes while Greg rushed inside. "Frank, I need some clothes for Mary and something for us to drink." Frank nodded and motioned for us to follow him. I stayed close behind with Mary still holding on to me. Soon we were in the foyer, heading to the staff rooms. I noticed Greg running past with a bag that looked like it was for first aid. Frank led us down a hallway into a small room, which I recognized as Mary's. The room had 1 bed, a dresser, and a mirror on the wall. It looked like the bathroom was shared. The only personal items I saw were a few pictures of a young Mary with an older couple and a newspaper clipping in a frame. I couldn't understand the articles since they were in a different language, but I decided not to ask questions right now. Mary finally let go of me as I helped her sit on the bed, but it didn't last long. She lay back and pulled me into a hug. I stayed there while she quietly cried, holding on to me. "Mary!" Cassandra exclaimed from the doorway. Suddenly, Cassandra was beside us, looking puzzled. As I felt Mary relax her hold, I took the chance to sit up. The moment I was free, Cassandra crawled into Mary's embrace, and they hugged tightly. I was happy to see their connection, even if things had changed between them. I wished it wasn't under these circumstances, but maybe this would bring them closer again. As I made my way back to my room, I barely got the door closed before it burst open again. I turned around just in time to catch Cassandra as she rushed towards me with a tight hug. "Thank you, James. You saved her." I gently patted her shoulder. I just did what anyone would do. Cassandra pulled back and smiled, but then her expression changed. "You're bleeding. Let me get Frank." Before I could reply, she dashed out. I took the chance to head to the bathroom. After washing my hands, I glanced at my reflection. My cheek and eye were puffy but seemed okay. However, there was a noticeable cut above my eye which explained the redness. I just hoped I wouldn't feel too sore. When I returned to my room, Frank was waiting with a bag of first aid supplies, and Cassandra was at the table. She had 2 covered plates of food prepared, but she was watching for me. "Good to see you. You didn't wash your face. I need to take some pictures, if that's all right," Frank said with a friendly smile. "Frank, I'll give you a raise if you just call me James from now on." Frank chuckled. "I might take you up on that, James." Smiling back, he motioned for me to sit down. I settled into the chair and closed my eyes. I listened as he took pictures of the bruise on my face before I heard the bag open. "This might sting a little," he warned firmly. I nodded as he pressed a cloth against the cut above my eye. I winced as the antiseptic stung. It kept hurting while he cleaned the cut as best as he could. A few minutes later, he had put butterfly stitches on the cut. After a bit of discomfort, I managed to ignore the dull ache. Once everything was taken care of, Frank left us to eat. I turned back to Cassandra and uncovered our dishes. At least this time I recognized lasagna, even with some extra ingredients. "So, what really happened?" Cassandra asked softly. I hesitated before swallowing my food. "I'm not completely sure. I came out of the barn and heard them arguing. He was trying to make her do things she didn't want to." I trailed off, hoping Cassandra would understand what I meant. "I think it was about money, things she couldn't get from you." But she wanted to end their agreement, and he didn't like that. I found them after a troubling situation had happened. I stepped in, things got heated, and I took action to stop it. I want security to check the area. Private spaces need to stay safe, and I want to feel confident in our security measures. I want cameras everywhere. Cassandra nodded softly. "Thank you, James. She's always been such a sweet girl. I don't know how she would have managed without your help." I nodded back. "I'm going to take a shower. Let yourself out when you're ready. I'll see you tomorrow for lunch." As I stood up, I missed her frown. But it didn't matter. Even if I was interested in her, that evening I felt unwell. I wanted to know how long Mary had been having a hard time. I wanted her to feel secure again. I was still upset as I crawled into bed. Even though I felt bad, I quickly fell asleep. This morning I woke up early as usual. I put on comfortable clothes. Frowning, I wondered if I could just order clothes online instead. Once dressed, I headed down to the kitchen. It must have been earlier than normal because I could hear Mary's lovely voice inside. I couldn't help but listen. Kenneth was stirring a pot, likely mixing eggs. He noticed me as I came in, but I waved him off before he could say anything. I leaned on the counter behind her, just enjoying the sound of her voice. When she finished speaking, I clapped gently to announce my presence. I couldn't help but smile as she jumped and blushed a bit. "How can I help?" I asked, stepping closer. She looked at me and smiled softly. "Sir, there's really no need. I want to help. I can cook for myself, but I've never cooked for a lot of people. I want to learn," I said sincerely. Mary turned to face me and nodded, then began showing me how to prepare large amounts of vegetables. Half an hour later, the dining room was quiet as I entered with a cart full of scrambled eggs. "Morning, everyone. Don't worry, these should be good for everyone," I just helped a little. I wasn't in charge." A few chuckles came from the group. After placing breakfast on the table, I helped Mary set out the bacon. Someone handed me a coffee, and I found myself seated next to her again. A few minutes later, I noticed that people seemed a bit uneasy around me. I set my fork down and stood up, catching everyone's attention. "I think it's important to talk about something that happened yesterday. I came across an unfortunate situation involving two of your colleagues. This situation escalated quickly, leading to an unfortunate confrontation. I'm sorry for any upset I caused, but I couldn't let the person responsible stay here because of how they acted. This would have been true even if nothing had happened to me." "Sir," Frank said, standing a little way off, "I think I speak for everyone here when I say we didn't know what was going on until yesterday. If we had known, we wouldn't have accepted it. We appreciate how quickly you acted, and we don't blame you for it." Once he finished, a young man among the other gardeners started clapping. Kenneth joined in, and soon everyone in the room was applauding. I just sat down, smiling shyly. At that moment, the kind woman next to me took my hand, her face turning a nice shade of pink. The next few days went by in a busy rush. Mary and I took a 4-hour drive to the nearest town to give our statement about her incident. She seemed nervous about staying in a hotel, so I arranged for us to come back home the same day. She didn't say much, but I noticed her looking at me when she thought I didn't see her. During a short nap, her hand found mine again, but when she woke up, she blushed deeply and moved her hand away. The next day, I spent time getting to know my living place. I found out I could order things online for delivery to a nearby location, which the kitchen staff picked up every few days with fresh food. I was happy to learn that most of our meals came from local farmers. We also had different spreads and sauces made nearby. Only the more unusual items were brought in from other places since we didn't have direct access to the ocean or big rivers, so fish came from other areas. However, deer meat came from a local hunter, and I was pleased to offer him more money when I learned about his arrangement. After that, I met some people in suits who introduced themselves politely. They only shared their job titles and that they would be in the area. They seemed surprised when I offered to arrange meals for them if they gave us their numbers, but they said no, mentioning national security. During this time, I kept to my daily routine. I woke up early to help Mary and Kenneth make breakfast, shared laughter and meals with the staff, and spent the rest of my day making business choices while interacting with Cassandra. I noticed she was getting more frustrated with my lack of interest, and I wondered how long it would be until I would share a bedroom with her. To shake things up a bit, I started visiting the barn regularly. Margaret finally asked me what I wanted to do with the horses. She frowned when I told her I didn't know the answer, but her face lit up when I let her continue with Boris's work. It was a Sunday in the second week when I was finally taken away from the mansion. One of my pharmaceutical companies bought another. There was a press conference planned for me to announce it. When Cassandra told me, I frowned and asked why I hadn't been informed earlier. Cassandra looked worried as she explained that Boris had handled the deal. Since I hadn't been directly involved and the money had changed hands after I took over the accounts, I could contest it. I didn't take long to decide, and Cassandra was relieved when I chose to move forward as planned. She also double-checked for any other deals that were still pending. To my surprise, the company I had taken over was just a short drive from my ex-wife's home. I met with a few directors there and explored the facility. This company was smaller but had a strong research department. Boris had acquired it under the promise that he would increase their research budget and move production to bigger, more efficient plants. Staff members who wished to retire could do so. I even decided to raise their retirement packages well above what they expected. The remaining staff members were reorganized and continued their work without any major issues. The press conference made me anxious. The bright lights were blinding, but I answered questions honestly. It seemed to go well, especially when a retired staff member spoke up about how happy he was with his severance. That evening, Cassandra and I stayed at a hotel. She seemed to want to keep the mood light after the busy day. She looked a bit let down when I suggested she get some rest. The next day, I decided to explore the town. Before noon, I found a toy store. A teddy bear in the window caught my eye. It was brown and fluffy, dressed like how Mary used to dress, so I couldn't help but buy it. The shopkeeper was pleased with the sale, as his store had not seen much business lately. I made sure to take a card so I could recommend him to others if I had the chance. After lunch, with a tired but apologetic Cassandra, we agreed to head home early. There wasn't much else I wanted to do, and the longer I stayed in town, the higher the chance of bumping into my ex, which I wanted to avoid. It was early evening when we finally got home. Cassandra excused herself, feeling unwell, and went to her room with Greg's help. Ben smiled and said goodnight to me, mentioning the possibility of a new team member and sharing his excitement about a new schedule. I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. After heading upstairs, I dropped my things by the door. Then I decided to go find Mary. My first stop was the kitchen, where I found Kenneth. "You're back early, sir," he said with a smile as I entered. I shrugged. I didn't see much reason to stay out, plus my ex lives in this city. Kenneth nodded. "Got it. What can I do for you? Are you hungry?" "No, I'm just looking for Mary." "Oh, she's in her room," Kenneth replied. "Thanks," I said, and walked away. As I headed to Mary's room, I felt uncertain. Sometimes she seemed far away, but at other times she would show affection, like holding my hand. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I took a deep breath and knocked softly on her door, but stopped when I heard quiet sounds coming from inside. "No. Please, no." Her voice was soft but worried. Worry flooded over me as I listened, realizing something wasn't right. I carefully opened the door and peeked inside. What I saw troubled me. Mary was sitting on the bed looking sad and distant, with headphones in her ears. She seemed lost in her thoughts, trying to handle something heavy. Not wanting to interrupt, I quietly closed the door and left, deciding I would check on her later when she might feel better. On my way back to my room, I remembered I had left something on the floor outside her room. I turned back to get it. After a moment of listening to the silence, I went back to my room with a heavy heart. That night, the cold shower felt fitting for my mood. The only comfort came from the warm air of the dryer. It took hours for me to fall asleep. The next morning, I felt uneasy. Part of me wanted to talk to Mary about what I'd seen, but another part wanted to pretend nothing happened. Most of all, I wanted answers. I decided to act like everything was normal. It was time for breakfast anyway. The walk to the kitchen was ordinary, with Mary's voice humming in the background. I entered the kitchen and nodded to Kenneth. Without saying anything, I took a knife and joined Mary to help chop vegetables. She lost her tune for just a moment, but quickly picked it back up. An hour later, we sat down to breakfast together. Many of the staff noticed my early return, thinking I was just back for the day. I looked around and saw happy faces. If only other workplaces understood that treating employees well builds loyalty. I had simply asked if anyone had any concerns, listened, and helped prepare breakfast. Even though I had only been here for about a week, they already treated me like family. Still, I couldn't help but think about Mary. I was struck by her graceful presence beside me. Every time she turned red, I felt the strong need to comfort her. She was always on my mind. When dinner was over, I took a stack of dishes to the sink to have a little time alone. That's when an idea popped into my head. Despite her traditional ways, she had a sweet charm in how she spoke with others. Maybe I could find some books in the library that would help me understand how to talk to her without feeling awkward. With a polite, "Thanks for breakfast," I headed to the library. I hadn't really paid attention to my steps until I reached the books. Not sure where to start, I began to look at the shelves. What should I search for? Old stories? Tips on manners? I stopped when I found a section with coloring books, which made me smile. I hadn't seen her there for a while. Just as I turned to look at another shelf, something caught my eye. A medium-sized book partly hidden behind the others. Bending down, I pulled it out carefully. The back cover had writing I couldn't read but thought looked nice. When I turned the book over, I frowned at a single word. Shibari. Turning the pages, I found out it was a beginner's guide to Japanese knot techniques. It started off simple, with knots and types of rope, including sizes and materials. Later, there were pictures explaining the techniques. As my heart raced, I remembered the awkward moment when I handed Mary the coloring book. With a sigh, I grabbed a few more books and tucked this one between them. I had a lot to learn, and I didn't want to do it in the library. 3 days passed as I worked through most of the book. It also took 3 days for my next order to arrive. Thankfully, it came in a plain brown box. I put the box, still sealed, inside my wardrobe, trusting my staff, especially Mary, not to go through my things. The book had opened up a new path for me. With my new understanding combined with my memories of Mary from that lively evening, I felt I could learn more about her and what she liked. That evening, I chose to eat alone. Cassandra seemed a little concerned, but accepted my choice. It was a change since she usually joined me for meals. Honestly, if it kept going this way, I'd have to talk to her about it. Knock, knock. I smiled, knowing this was the moment I had been looking forward to. I stood up and walked over to the door to open it. "Good evening, sir. I have your meal," she said with a gentle smile. Her eyes barely met mine before she looked down at the floor. I remembered reading that making eye contact can show respect. She looked eager to connect, but her shyness kept her from doing so. "Thank you, Mary," I said with a smile and pointed to the table. She quickly wheeled the cart into the room and started setting out my food. After everything was ready, she stepped back to see her work. Seemingly pleased, she took the cart and started to leave. "Mary," I called softly. She paused, letting the cart go. Turning to me, she looked at the floor between us, a little color rising in her cheeks. "Yes, sir?" "You're very lovely," I said gently. Her eyes met mine for a brief moment before she looked down again, her cheeks turning red. I noticed her outfit, a simple black skirt and comfortable shoes. She wore a white blouse and her fair skin showed light freckles on her cheeks. Her long brown hair was tied back neatly. "I'm sorry, Mary. I didn't mean to stop you. I just wondered how your hair would look in a braid," I said kindly. "Thank you, sir," she replied with a bit of surprise in her voice. I smiled and nodded as she turned and quickly pushed the cart out of the room. Honestly, I wasn't sure how that had gone. If it wasn't good, I figured I might hear from Cassandra soon. I kept thinking about it while eating my meal and showering, but at least this time, when I got into bed, I fell asleep right away. The next morning was the same as usual. I got up, got dressed, and went to the kitchen. As usual, Mary was singing, but today her song felt different. Usually she sang sweetly, but today it was a bit livelier. When I walked in, Kenneth looked a little distracted too. I nodded to him and he nodded back. I went over to Mary. This time, when I picked up a knife, she was already blushing, but she kept singing. That's when I noticed her hair was in a long braid down her back. I guessed that if she let it down, it would reach halfway down her back. I just smiled and continued cutting. Breakfast felt more cheerful this morning as Mary's good mood seemed to lift everyone's spirits. The only moment of awkwardness came from Frank. "Mary, dear, I don't think that hairstyle is quite right," he commented. A flicker of worry crossed Mary's face for a moment, but then I spoke up. "Sorry, Frank. That was my idea. I asked her last night to braid her hair. I was just curious about how long it was." It took a few seconds before I realized that everyone in the room, except for Mary, was staring at me. "What?" I asked, feeling a bit confused. That was enough to bring everyone back to their meals. This time I noticed a small smile aimed at me. I even enjoyed her blush as I gently patted her leg. I thought I felt her fingers lightly touch my hand as I moved away, but when I looked, she was focused on her work again. Once dinner was over, I helped wash up the dishes and decided to learn how to use the dishwasher. Kenneth showed me how to stack the plates on a plastic rack. Then we pushed it into the machine, lowered the lid, and pressed a big green button to start the hot water cleaning. Meanwhile, Mary was washing the fragile items carefully by hand. With her focused on the sink, I saw a good chance to chat. "Mary," I said quietly as I walked over. She glanced at me and then went back to her work. "Yes, sir? When is your next day off?" "Tomorrow and the next day are my days off," she replied softly. I smiled and nodded. "How about we go shopping? I'm still getting used to this place and I could use a break. Just to relax, do a little shopping, maybe see a movie." Mary looked a bit shy as she scrubbed a glass. "Sir, why me?" "Why not you? I enjoy spending time with you. Plus, I want to make sure you're doing all right after everything that happened before. We need to get you a nice outfit for the upcoming court date." I didn't see the small shiver that ran through her. Unknown to me, Mary was dealing with her feelings. "Sir, if you think it's a good idea, I will go with you." I frowned just a little. "Mary, it's your day off. I'd love for you to come, but I'm not forcing you." "Not yet, anyway," I joked, curious about her reaction. Mary smiled and nodded softly. "I'll be ready after breakfast," she said. I gave a nod and headed off to start my day. First, I went to the barn to learn how to saddle one of the big horses. After that, I had my first riding lesson. I felt a bit nervous, but Margaret reassured me I would be fine. Once I was in the saddle, I quickly felt relaxed. I had read that these horses are gentle and friendly, and the steady movement was comforting. I thought about bringing Mary later to see if she wanted to ride, too. I missed lunch with Cassandra that day, but Frank brought me food when I returned. After feeling a bit tired and dusty, I took a shower. I was surprised to find Cassandra sitting at the edge of my bed when I came back. "Sorry, how long have you been here?" I asked. "Not long," she replied. I tried to stay calm, knowing she was curious. "I need the plane ready for tomorrow. I'm taking your sister shopping and maybe to a movie. It shouldn't be too far. What would you suggest?" James, why are you taking my sister?" she asked, looking a bit shocked. I shrugged. I feel bad about what happened. Without a job, someone took advantage of her. I wanted to take her out, do some shopping, and make sure she has what she needs. Cassandra nodded, concerned. "Sir, James, I would like to join you both tomorrow." I smiled, aware that I couldn't really say no. "Sure thing. We're just going for the day. If you could find a place for Mary to get some new clothes, plus lunch and something fun to do, that would be great. Oh, and make sure there's enough for Ben and Greg, too. I don't want them to feel left out." I walked over to the table and enjoyed a tasty toasted sandwich. I noticed I was getting more familiar and better quality food lately, and I liked it, especially since most of the staff enjoyed it too. There were benefits to buying local, and I had no complaints. With my new wealth, I wasn't exactly sure if I deserved it. After finishing my sandwich, I saw Cassandra sitting on the edge of my bed with a cheeky smile. "I'll let you get organized for tomorrow," I said while heading for the door. "Someday I'll need you to teach me how to plan things like you do." As I stepped out of the room, I heard a soft thud. I snickered, thinking it was probably a pillow tossed my way. My favorite spot, at least for now, was the library. The only person I had seen there was Mary. As I turned a corner of the shelves, I spotted her. She hadn't noticed me yet as she flipped through a thick book. I walked closer, and just then she noticed me and sat up straight. The book quickly closed, and she hid it behind her back. I wasn't sure, but I thought it was the second volume of a book I had in my room. "Sir, I didn't see you there," she said quickly, her cheeks a bit red. I smiled and said, "I'm sorry to surprise you. You're so talented. I didn't mean to interrupt." This made her blush even more, and she looked down, trying to hide a smile. She straightened up, appearing more confident, and I was struck by her presence. "Sir, why do you want to take me with you tomorrow?" she asked quietly. Something in her voice made me stop. I realized she wanted a real answer, not just a playful response. "Mary, when I first heard your voice, it felt like I was listening to something special," I said, pausing as I noticed her blush again. Now she was looking right at me. "When I walked into the kitchen and saw you, I was amazed. You were so incredible that I just wanted to be close to you. As I've gotten to know you a bit more, I look forward to our small moments together, when you blush and when we share laughter. When I found you that day, I was overwhelmed. Instead of running for help, I could only think about making sure you were okay. And now, I want to look after you." Mary looked puzzled. "Sir? Me? I don't understand. Cassandra is already taking care of us. That's why she's here." Now I was surprised. "Who told you that?" Mary frowned slightly but stood firm. "You don't have to pretend, sir. I'm the one who cleans your room." It took me a moment to understand what she meant before I remembered a misunderstanding. "Mary, I've never had that kind of relationship with your sister. She used my shower once and left some things behind, but that was all. I've never been close to her." I waited for her to respond, but she still looked doubtful. So with a sigh, I began to explain how my marriage ended. "Now I'm here and Cassandra is getting too friendly with me. I've been in a similar situation before, and honestly, it makes me uneasy. Your sister is a great helper, and I don't plan on letting her or you go, but I just can't handle it. She's not you." I froze, wishing I could take back that last part, but it was too late. Mary went through many emotions as I talked. By the time I finished, she seemed to believe me. "Sir, do you know how Cassandra and I ended up here?" I shook my head, genuinely puzzled. "Cassandra is a mail-order bride." I paused, trying to understand her words. "It's not what you think, sir. she whispered. Our parents were protesters in Ukraine. They peacefully opposed the government, but that also meant we were in danger. I was taken a few months after my 20th birthday. My parents gave in to save me. I was shocked as she started to cry. I was allowed to see them one last time. They told me to go with Cassandra. She had a way to escape. They were gone the next day. Oh, Mary, you don't have to share this with me, I said, wrapping her in my arms. Despite the heavy story she just told, I felt a warmth as she leaned against me. Cassandra made some connections. One person helped us reach a kind and wealthy man from the West. We went to Poland to meet him. He was nice and offered us a place to stay while I waited for Cassandra to come back. Mary took a few deep breaths. Cassandra agreed to go with him to keep me safe. I looked down at her, surprised. This explained so much. Cassandra's urgency was now clear. Mary, I'm not asking you to be with me in that way. I'm not asking you to marry me. I won't pressure you. This is your home for as long as you want it. But I would like to spend more time with you. Mary finally pulled away, giving me a tear-streaked smile. I would love that, sir. Before I could react, she lightly touched my lips with hers and then left the library quickly. When I finally gathered my thoughts, I looked around the room. I noticed a collection of books that caught my interest. I picked one that seemed appealing and started to read. Today felt different. I had gotten up, showered, dressed, and gone to the kitchen. A small wave of sadness came over me when I realized I couldn't hear Mary's voice as I entered. As I walked in, I greeted Kenneth with my usual good morning nod before sitting next to Frank to start preparing the vegetables. Frank wasn't the easiest person to chat with, but he wasn't bad either. When I worked with Mary, she used to sing sweetly while she worked. Before long, we finished making breakfast and moved to the kitchen. It was a nice surprise to find Mary already seated and waiting for us. I smiled when I saw her outfit. She wore a pair of small brown boots and a blouse as I set our meal on the table. Taking my usual spot next to her, she gave me a quick smile before serving herself. I was surprised when she switched her full plate for my empty one. It took me a moment to understand she had chosen to serve me. A quick look around showed that nobody else had noticed but Frank. Thank you, Mary, I said quietly. She just smiled and began to enjoy her food. The conversation flowed easily as usual. There was some talk about a possible storm coming in the next few days, but I didn't pay much attention. It did remind me that I needed to buy some warm clothes for the upcoming cold weather. After we finished eating, I helped Kenneth take the dishes back to the kitchen. This time I didn't stay. I went up to my room, took a shower, and got dressed for a day out. I grabbed a small suitcase to bring back anything I might buy. As an afterthought, I tossed Mary's teddy bear into it. When I went downstairs, I found Frank talking with Greg and Ben. Ah, good, you're ready, sir, Frank said with a slight bow. The car is ready, we're just waiting for the ladies. I'm here, Mary called out, coming from the hallway. I smiled as she hurried over to us. Behind her was Cassandra, who looked a bit nervous. She smiled politely at me, but something seemed to be on her mind. Good morning, ladies. Are we ready to go? I asked cheerfully. Mary nodded with her usual smile, but Cassandra just mumbled about not being a morning person. I shrugged and motioned for Ben and Greg to lead the way. I'll let you know when we're heading back, Frank, I said, giving him a wave. Enjoy your trip, sir. That made me think. These people had days off, but did they really get to do anything fun? I wondered as we climbed into the back seat of the large four-wheel drive I recognized from before. I sat in the back with Cassandra on the opposite side. Mary was squeezed between us, which explained Cassandra's nervous look. Ben and Greg took the front seats. Without a word, Ben started driving. It didn't take us long to reach the airstrip. It took about 15 minutes to get there since we were driving a bit faster this time because it was daylight. When we arrived, I didn't wait for anyone to open the door. I jumped out and quickly helped Mary out, and Greg did the same for Cassandra. I was still surprised that I owned a private jet. As we walked toward the plane, I carried my own suitcase. I noticed I was the only one with luggage. Cassandra had a small handbag, but Mary wasn't carrying anything, not even a phone now that I thought about it. Once we got inside the plane, I found a seat. Mary sat across from me and Cassandra sat next to me. She seemed more in control now. Ben and Greg took seats at the front after Ben closed the door. Just like before, there was no safety announcement. The engines roared to life and we started moving. I noticed Mary looked worried, so I reached out and took her hand. She looked between my hand and her sister before taking it firmly. As the engines roared, she closed her eyes while I couldn't help but smile. I loved flying, and the feeling of takeoff was my favorite part. Mary finally let go of my hand as we lifted off. The flight was smooth and the plane tilted gently to one side. When we straightened out, I turned to Cassandra. "I'd like to plan a vacation for everyone," I said with determination. Cassandra looked at me with surprise. "What do you mean, vacation?" "I have the feeling that you all don't get out much," I said, relaxing my shoulders a bit. "I want to pay for everyone to fly somewhere, either all together or in smaller groups, and take a week off. You all take care of each other. I want to pay someone else to do that for a change." Cassandra stared at me for a moment, but slowly nodded. "I can make arrangements. I'm sure—" Her voice trailed off. When I looked forward, I saw Mary smiling at me. That was enough for me to know that the others would be happy with my idea. It seemed like Cassandra had found her place, but the others needed a break. The rest of the flight was quiet. Cassandra's mood added a bit of tension. I didn't know if there would be any issues later on, but I sensed something could happen. I focused on holding Mary's hand until we landed. As we taxied in, Cassandra stood up and made us let go of each other. I brushed a loose strand of hair behind Mary's ear, which made her smile. It was interesting how shy she was, given her many interests. I thought back on that night and realized I couldn't have imagined it without meeting her in person. Wanting to avoid any more tension with Cassandra, I guided Mary off the plane. As we arrived, I saw a limousine waiting on the tarmac, and I caught a glimpse of Cassandra getting inside. I helped Mary into the car next to her, which got us a few looks. "So where are we going first?" I asked Cassandra. She gave me a stern look before collecting herself. "We're going to one of your hotels. Once we check in, a tailor will come to take Mary's measurements. I've already picked out some colors and styles for her." "That sounds good, thank you," I replied. "But how about we take a walk through some markets first? We could look for some comfortable clothes and winter gear." I glanced at Mary and smiled. "What do you think?" "I'm just happy to be here," Mary said softly. I smiled back and nodded, feeling a bit of silence settle in. The drive didn't take long. It turned out that the hotel I co-owned was right at the airport, a place where upscale travelers often stayed. When we arrived and the doors opened, I felt a little disappointed. The hotel was just an extension of the airport, with a familiar look. I helped Mary and Cassandra out of the car and we made our way inside. Beyond the windows, the inside looked nicer, though it was still mostly a bright white room. There was a bit of confusion at the front desk when Cassandra asked for Boris's old room. It seemed that the company she managed continued to operate without announcing Boris's passing. After a brief conversation and a call with my lawyer, we got everything sorted out. The elevator ride was short and quiet, and we were led to a simple door, the only one on our floor. After using a door card, Ben and Greg went inside to prepare the room. A moment later, Ben appeared at the door and nodded. Without saying anything, Cassandra went in. I smiled at Mary before I followed. If I had to describe the room in one word, comfortable. The main area had soft carpets and several couches. There was no television, but a nice electric fireplace added warmth. There were 3 doors leading from the main room, indicating there was no kitchen. A small fridge held some snacks, showing that this place was meant for short visits. At least we weren't staying long. "So when will the tailor be here?" I asked Cassandra, who was settling onto one of the couches. Cassandra pulled out her phone and sent a quick message before answering. "She should be here in about 10 minutes. I nodded, deciding to explore a bit. The 3 rooms off the main area were all bedrooms, each with a large, cozy bed, thick curtains, and a private bathroom. This place was really just for short stays. I arrived back in the lounge just in time to hear a knock on the door. I ignored Ben and Greg's soft objections and went to open it. A middle-aged woman stood there. "Hello, I believe I've been called for a fitting," she said. I nodded and motioned for her to come in. "This way, please." "Mary here," I said, pointing to the quiet woman. "Needs some suits, dresses, and comfortable clothes, along with anything else she likes." The woman raised an eyebrow at me as she walked past. I wasn't sure what I said that surprised her. I just wanted Mary to have enough clothes for every occasion. If it were up to me, I'd give her plenty of chances to dress nicely in the upcoming months. But for now, I had to sit with Ben and Greg while Mary, Cassandra, and the tailor went into another room. They were in there for over an hour. When they returned, Cassandra was chatting with the woman who was taking notes. Mary seemed a bit uneasy, but she smiled shyly at me when our eyes met. "All right, ladies. If we're done, I'd like to go have some fun," I said with a grin. As soon as we got out of the elevator, a limousine was waiting for us. I told the driver to take us to the nearest shopping center. It took about half an hour to arrive. Airports are usually a bit outside the main part of big cities. But that was fine. I was staring at a donut shop right at the entrance. With a smile, I went inside, leaving my friends to follow. To my surprise, Mary came in right behind me. "What do you want?" I asked, looking at the donut options. Mary stood next to me, checking them out. "Jam or custard?" she asked, pointing to the donuts. I thought for a moment. "Why don't we share? I don't want two anyway." Mary laughed and nodded. "Sharing sounds good." I turned to the others. "I'll have a donut with pink frosting," Ben said, grinning. "I'd like a coffee," Greg added. Only Cassandra didn't want anything. She frowned at me when I offered her a donut and rolled her eyes at the mention of coffee. She was nothing like her sister, who was practically bouncing with joy as the shopkeeper wrapped our donuts. That was just the beginning of our fun. Mary and I enjoyed sharing bites of our donuts, shopping for comfy clothes, and acting younger than we were. I even have a picture of Mary and me on a children's merry-go-round. Ben and Greg seemed to be having a good time too, despite hanging back a little. The only one who wasn't enjoying herself was Cassandra. She had been quiet all day, only saying a word or two. I really couldn't figure her out. It looked like she was used to a more comfortable life, but it didn't seem to make her any happier. Mary, on the other hand, just seemed to enjoy life overall. While I thought about this, I walked past a pillar and bumped into someone. In that moment, a man took my wallet from my pocket. Luckily, Ben noticed right away. Before I knew it, Ben had caught the man's shoulder. The man got scared and tried to pull away. I saw something shiny and Ben jumped back. The man dropped my wallet and hurried away. I was too concerned about Ben, who was hurt. "Somebody call for help!" I shouted, pressing on Ben's chest to stop the bleeding. It took about 10 minutes for the paramedics to arrive. They helped Ben before taking him to the hospital, and the police came after that. We spent another 20 minutes answering their questions. Once they left with our information, we decided to go back to the hotel. It was routine to settle in for the night. Ben was at the hospital, and Greg wanted to make sure we were safe. Cassandra's phone rang as we got back to our room, and she grimaced before hanging up. "Ben's okay. The knife just grazed his rib. They'll let him go in the morning." "Looks like we're staying the night then?" I said. Cassandra sighed and fell onto the couch. I rolled my eyes and tried not to laugh as Mary did the same. It seemed like it was going to be a long night. We ordered room service for dinner. There was some casual conversation among the four of us, but nothing too interesting. Cassandra was upset about not going home tonight, while the rest of us worried about Ben. We spent a few moments talking about our recent purchases before Mary handed some clothes to Cassandra, who mumbled, "This will work." Mary rolled her eyes and picked up a similar set of clothes. They both went into the middle room, leaving me with Greg. "I guess that's it?" "Looks that way. Not much else to do." Greg laughed softly. "Okay, let's get some sleep then. We'll head home as soon as we can get Ben," I said with a yawn, waving goodbye to Greg. I had just closed my eyes when the door opened. I silently hoped it was Mary, but I felt uncertain. Sitting up, I noticed someone coming toward me. It didn't seem like it would be Mary. "Cassandra, what's up?" I asked casually. I heard a small giggle before she sighed. "Enough is enough, James. You're a guy, I'm a girl, and I have needs." I couldn't hide my frown at her words. It was true in a way. She had needs, but they felt more physical than emotional. There wasn't any love like what I felt for Mary. I was still lost in thought when Cassandra sat down beside me on the bed. I could smell the alcohol on her breath as she leaned closer. With a sigh, I raised my hand a little to signal her to stop. What? She stammered, moving back a bit. I sighed again. "Cassandra, you don't have to do this." "No, you don't understand. I really want to," she said softly, her voice shaking a little. "Cassandra, I sighed, gently touching her cheek. Your sister told me everything. Even if we got closer, I won't marry you. I need you to stop because I don't want to lead you on. Cassandra started to tremble a bit, letting out a small breath. Why? Why not? What's wrong with me? I reached forward and pulled her into my arms. Her head rested on my chest while I rubbed her back gently. I then laid her down beside me and covered her with a blanket. Once she was warm, I let her go. Cassandra, there's nothing wrong with you. You're a wonderful person, young, smart, and talented. You're an amazing assistant, and I hope you stay on with us for a long time. You don't have to feel like you need to marry me. I want you to be happy, but that happiness doesn't have to include me. It's not fair, she said softly, her voice breaking. I know. I'm sorry, I said, standing up. I turned away without saying anything more and left her in my room. I didn't want to send her away. I walked back to the lounge, spending a few moments staring at Mary's door, wondering if she was asleep. I thought about knocking on Greg's door, but decided against it. Eventually, I lay down on the couch and fell asleep. I'm sorry, I heard Cassandra say quietly. I woke up with a start, but realized Cassandra wasn't near me. Oh, Cass, Greg said. As I turned, I saw Cassandra sitting with Greg, who leaned down to talk to her softly. It made me smile before I felt a little uneasy. They clearly shared a bond. The fact she was with him said a lot about how she felt. It made me sad to think she might be risking that connection by focusing on me. I smiled and tried to ignore their quiet talk. A few minutes later, their conversation came to an end, and I heard Greg's door close. Unsure if Cassandra was still in the room, I waited quietly, wondering what might happen next. Just as I thought about getting up and going to bed, I felt someone sit down beside me on the couch. Part of me wants to be angry with you, Cassandra said softly, but I know you're trying to do the right thing. Please keep being that person. My sister cares about you a lot. She deserves happiness and love. As she spoke, I felt a light touch on my arm before she quietly stood up and left the room. I was feeling tired and a bit achy when another person sat down next to me. I blinked at the brightness of the room and rubbed my eyes. Turning to see who it was, I found Mary there, looking calm. You slept out here, she said quietly. I yawned and nodded. Yeah, this couch isn't as comfy as it looks. Why? She asked, her voice calm. I sighed, feeling the pressure of the moment. Because I needed some space, to think. Mary sat down next to me, her eyes searching mine for a moment. She looked uncertain, as if she didn't know what to do or say. Instead of doing anything that might feel too much, she simply rested her head on my shoulder. Her presence felt comforting in the quiet room. We sat there in silence, and I could sense the tension in the air. I gently put my arm around her, hoping to make her feel safe. Mary leaned in closer, resting her head against my chest. The moment felt calm, special in its simplicity, without needing many words or actions. After some time, Mary pulled back a bit, her expression softening. We exchanged a small, understanding smile, knowing that sometimes just being there felt enough. It was then that I noticed something seemed off. I paused, realizing the moment was going in a direction I hadn't expected. Taking a deep breath, I stepped back a little, creating space between us, and looked at Mary. Her expression changed, but I could feel the tension still linger. Mary, I said gently, trying to choose my words carefully. We need to stop. Her gaze met mine briefly, and she nodded, her face showing her emotions. I slowly let go, making sure the moment didn't go any further, giving her space to gather herself. The air felt heavy, but I knew this was the right decision. We shared a brief, knowing glance before I turned away, allowing her the time she needed. As I moved toward the door, I paused and said, It's important to take things slow. Let's not rush into anything we aren't ready for. The feelings from the moment were strong, but I knew something needed to change. I took a step back, creating a bit of distance. I noticed confusion in her eyes as I released her hands. Are you okay? I asked softly, wanting to understand how she felt. Mary looked at me. Though there was tension lingering, her expression softened. She looked down for a moment as if deep in thought before finally nodding. I saw her eyes glisten, but they were not filled with sadness. She seemed to have mixed feelings that were hard to read. Without saying much, I reached out and pulled her into a gentle hug. The warmth between us felt comforting, and for a moment we just stayed like that, quiet and connected. After some time, Mary looked up at me, her tears gone, replaced by a small, shy smile. "I just wanted to feel valued," she whispered softly. I nodded, understanding her without needing to ask more. "You are important, Mary. You don't have to prove anything." We shared a quiet moment, and I knew our connection was more about understanding and mutual respect than anything else. That was enough for now. "Come on. I heard about taking care of each other after," I said. Without waiting for an answer, I picked her up gently. She felt light as she pressed against me. I carried her to her door, which she opened. Once inside her room, I set her down carefully. I joined her a moment later, lifting her up again and taking her to the bathroom where I placed her back on her feet. She didn't step away, which made me smile, and I turned on the shower. It took a moment to warm up, but when it was ready, I guided her under the water. I spent the next few minutes looking after her with care. I must have done well, as Mary wanted to return the favor. When we finished, we dried off in a similar way. Once we were dry, we shared a sweet moment, and she led me back to her bedroom. We climbed under the sheets and cuddled together. "How did you know?" Mary asked quietly. I sighed and smiled. "I accidentally walked in on you." This caught her attention. She sat up and looked into my eyes. "On my first business trip, I brought you a gift. I found your room and went to see you." She looked confused, so I explained further. "When I got to your door, I heard you say something about not wanting to feel that way again. I was worried someone upset you, so I opened your door." Her eyes widened in surprise. "You saw that, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "After that, I found the book you dropped when I saw you in the library. I started reading and learning more." Before I could say more, she kissed me, catching me off guard. "Please, just let me be with you. I want to do anything to stay by your side." I smiled at her words and pulled her closer. I turned to face her and gently stroked her cheek. "Mary, the first time I heard your voice, I felt a strong connection. From that moment, I wanted to get to know you better. And now, I never want to let you go." That made her smile brightly as she snuggled into me. It wasn't long before we both fell asleep. The sound of the door opening woke me up. I moved quickly and Mary jumped a bit, but we both saw Cassandra right away. She looked a bit unsure, but then she managed a small smile. "Good morning. I have some clothes for you, James. I need to get dressed, so." I understood the hint and held out my hand. Cassandra paused for a moment, then handed me my jeans and turned her back. I quickly stood up and pulled on the comfortable denim. Leaning over the bed, I gave Mary a quick gesture of affection before stepping away to leave them alone. As I stepped out of the room, I saw Greg and Ben waiting for me. "Ben, it's great to see you're doing well. How are you feeling?" I asked. "I'm good, James. Just need to take it easy for a couple of weeks. I have some medicine if I need it," Ben said with a smile. "What about your guard duties?" Ben smiled again. "We have a new person starting tomorrow. I'll train him and then take some time off to recover." I nodded and turned to Greg. "I need to talk to you." Greg looked a bit surprised and followed me into my empty bedroom. "Okay, I'll be honest. I wasn't asleep last night. I saw you with Cassandra." Greg seemed uneasy and cleared his throat. "Yes, sir. Is there a problem?" "Greg, I've never been involved with her. I'm interested in someone else. If things go well with you and Cassandra, just let me know if you need some time off for a break or something." Greg seemed taken aback. "Sir, Greg, it's James. And unless you need something, I'd like to get dressed before we head home," I said with a grin. Greg nodded and quickly left. I found a simple cotton shirt to wear with my jeans and put on some comfortable shoes. After I was dressed, I went back to the lounge. It looked like someone had ordered breakfast. Ben and Greg were already waiting, so I served food for the 5 of us. Just as I plated the last of the French toast, Mary's door opened, and she walked out with Cassandra. Mary looked calm and gave me a small smile, while Cassandra appeared a bit confused. But I had food, and food always helps. Once I served everyone, we all started eating. "Cassandra, how is our health coverage?" I asked. Cassandra took a moment to chew before replying. "It's pretty good, depending on your salary." I glanced at Ben, who was enjoying his meal. I want everyone working in my home to have the best coverage. This includes their families if they have any. From now on, I'll cover any extra costs. I also want any expenses from the last year to be reimbursed. Cassandra stared at me for a moment before nodding. Ben looked pleased, and even Mary smiled. The only one who didn't show much emotion was Greg, who quickly glanced at Cassandra before going back to his food. I didn't want to pry, but had a feeling Greg might not have anyone to cover. After we finished eating, the 5 of us grabbed our things and headed back to the plane. Getting back on took a bit longer than leaving. Our security let us on from my home, but we still had to pass through airport security before heading to the tarmac. Soon, we were boarding. As we took our seats, I noticed Mary was next to me and remembered that she was a bit nervous about flying. I quickly turned to grab my suitcase and opened it up. I took out the teddy bear I had bought for Mary. I turned back and lifted up the armrest, gently pulling Mary close to my side, holding the teddy against her chest as I waited for her to see it. "Oh! Oh!" she exclaimed with excitement. I smiled as she waved at me. "This is what I wanted to give you that day." I watched as she realized what it was, and her face turned a little red. Without saying anything, she hugged the teddy bear and snuggled closer under my arm. As the plane started to taxi to the runway, I thought about my life now. After losing the things I once loved, I now had someone special who made it all worthwhile, besides my parents. I hoped they were together somewhere, happy like I felt. As the engines roared to life, Mary tensed up and buried her face for a moment, relaxing a little while later when the plane flew smoothly. That's when I remembered our earlier conversation. "Cassandra?" I asked, wanting her attention. "Yes, James?" she replied calmly. "For emergencies and quick trips, should we think about getting a helicopter?" Cassandra paused to consider my question. That might be a good idea. The pilot we hired for this plane," she pointed to it, "can also fly helicopters." She was a bit disappointed when Boris said no. "That's great," I said with a smile. "See if she can train other pilots. If not, find 2 staff members and send them for training." I leaned back and wrapped my arms around Mary's shoulders. I found out that the nearest airport was a couple of hours away from home, but there was a town much closer. With the travel time to the runway, having a helicopter option made sense for emergencies. The sound of the wheels hitting the runway brought me back to reality. I guess I had dozed off during the flight. Mary was still cuddled up against me. As I stretched, I noticed Cassandra pull her hand away from Greg's, who looked neutral again. I sighed. "Cassandra, whatever is happening between you and Greg, you don't have to keep it from me. This is about your happiness." Cassandra just looked at me and I saw a tear fall down her cheek. Greg's serious demeanor softened as he wrapped her in his arms. "Finally," Mary whispered, her smile bright as she watched her sister. It was about time they found some peace. Cassandra had been through so much to keep her sister safe, but now there was hope. Later that evening, I was in my office getting ready for the night ahead. I had sent Cassandra an ad for an Airbus H130 for her to think about. It seemed like a good decision, but I knew the pilot would make the final choice. Knock, knock. I looked up as the door opened, and Mary came in, pushing a small cart with my meal. "I thought you had today off?" I asked with a smile. Mary blushed and looked down for a moment. "I just wanted to see you." Her words made me stop. I walked over to her and gently lifted her chin so she could look me in the eye. "Mary, you don't need a reason to visit me," I said softly, offering her a warm smile. Mary's face softened, and she nodded. I wanted her to feel free to make her own choices and feel comfortable with them. I smiled again, glad for her company, and added, "If you ever feel unsure, always know you can speak up." She returned a small smile and nodded. We shared a quiet moment of understanding before she turned to leave with the cart. Just before she reached the door, I called her name and she paused, looking back with a gentle smile. "Thank you, Mary," I said, grateful for her presence. With that, she nodded and stepped out, leaving behind a peaceful feeling between us. I reached out and gently touched her cheek, feeling the warmth of her skin. "You seemed like you were drifting off," I said softly, wanting to bring her back to the moment. Mary simply smiled, looking calm and happy. "I'll be in my room after dinner. You're welcome to join me if you want." I turned back to my desk, focusing on the meal in front of me. Tonight, it was steak with pepper gravy and sweet potato wedges. A simple but tasty dinner. My stomach growled with eagerness. Whoever made this meal deserved thanks, and I made a note to find out who was in charge of dinner. The food was always great, a wonderful mix of comfort and flavor. I briefly thought about how to show my appreciation to the staff, maybe by joining them for a meal or improving their dining area. That seemed like a good idea. With that thought, I enjoyed my dinner, appreciating the peaceful evening. After I finished eating, I took my dishes to the kitchen, which was quiet at that time. The staff must have been finishing up their meals, leaving me in a bit of solitude. I took a moment to gather my thoughts before heading back to my room, knowing the evening was just beginning. When I returned to my room, I felt a mix of excitement and anticipation. After a short pause, I decided to take a shower. The warm water was comforting, helping to wash away the day's worries. Just as I started to relax, I noticed someone had come in. Turning, I saw Mary's shy smile. "I heard the shower, so I thought I could come in," she said, looking a bit unsure. I smiled back and said warmly, "My room is always open to you." "You're welcome any time." Mary relaxed at my words, and we enjoyed a quiet moment together. We spent some time helping each other tidy up, pleased to make sure everything was just right. Once we dried off, Mary appeared energized and a little breathless. With a gentle touch, I led her from the bathroom towards the bed, her excitement clear. "What was your safe word again?" I asked, wanting to confirm our communication. "Desist," she replied softly. "Very good," I said with a kind smile. I picked up a pillow and set it aside to reveal our plans for the evening. "Kneel, please," I directed. "Yes," Mary responded eagerly, quickly getting into position. I took some rope and carefully guided her hands behind her back, securing them comfortably. This also helped her sit gracefully. I took my time, and soon Mary was tied in a way that made her feel both secure and excited. I helped her to her feet and turned her to face me. Her rosy cheeks and bright smile reassured me. "Is this okay?" I asked. She nodded with a smile. "Good," I said, giving her a soft kiss. "Now please get on the bed and lie down comfortably." She nodded in agreement. I assisted her as she settled onto the pillows, making sure she was comfortable. "Now just let me know if you feel uneasy at all. I'm going to continue getting things ready," I said, gently brushing her cheek with my hand. She smiled and leaned into my touch, nodding. I leaned in to place a gentle kiss on her forehead before reaching for another piece of rope. I quickly tied the additional knots, ensuring she remained comfy. With everything prepared, I picked up a blindfold, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. She helped me fasten it securely before relaxing back. I took a moment to give her a soft kiss. Then, I focused on checking her comfort, letting my hands glide over her shoulders and arms. I gently ran my hands along her legs, watching her reactions closely. Mary responded with a slight shiver but remained calm. "We should talk about the future," I said softly. Mary nodded, her expression focused and attentive. I smiled at her, feeling grateful for her trust. "I'm glad we can talk like this," I added, keeping the conversation light yet sincere. As we shared this moment, I felt a sense of comfort between us. It was important to keep a connection based on understanding and respect. "Let's take things one step at a time," I suggested warmly. Mary seemed to relax a bit more, happy with how we were talking. We took a moment to pause, both of us thinking about the future with hope and shared dreams. I placed my hands gently on her sides. She shifted slightly but didn't say anything. The air felt full of unspoken feelings, so I waited, letting the calmness grow between us. "Is everything okay?" I asked softly, giving her time to answer. Mary nodded, her breathing steady. "Yes," she whispered, her voice quiet but calm. We sat in silence, reflecting on the moment together. I wanted to make sure she felt comfortable and that our connection was built on respect and understanding. After a short pause, I stood up and moved to the other side of the room, getting ready for the rest of the evening. Mary's quiet presence reminded me that connection and good communication were essential, and that we needed to build our relationship on trust. The evening went smoothly, filled with a sense of calm and closeness. We were both ready for the journey ahead. I noticed the excitement in her eyes as I approached her again, trying to keep my voice calm. "Do you need a moment?" I asked gently. Mary nodded, looking focused yet a bit tense. She seemed ready to continue but was still taking everything in. "Just remember, this is your choice," I reassured her with a smile. As the moment continued, I kept a steady pace, making sure it felt relaxed. Mary was breathing evenly. I focused on our connection, ensuring she felt at ease. We moved forward together, taking our time. Mary's responses softened and she began to feel comfortable, finding peace in our quiet support. Once things calmed down, I helped her settle in a gentle way, making sure she felt relaxed. We shared a peaceful space, both of us recognizing how important trust and communication were. The atmosphere was light, and I made sure she was comfortable, giving her a moment to breathe. "I'll run us a bath," I said with a warm smile. I got off the bed and headed to the bathroom. I quickly checked the bathtub controls, which were more detailed than those for the shower. I set the temperature and adjusted the water level, adding some light scents and bubbles. A moment later, the water started flowing, and I felt pleased that it would fill up in no time. When I returned to the room, Mary was still there, propped up on her elbows, watching me. As I got closer, she sat up. "Come on," I laughed. "The bath will be cold if we don't hurry." With a playful voice, she said, "Nope, it will stay warm." I laughed again as we moved nearer, enjoying our time together. "I think the bath is ready now," I said. Mary smiled. "I know how to run the bath." I took her hand and guided her to the bathroom. The tub was already filled and bubbles were spilling over the sides. I helped Mary step into the warm water. She gasped as she relaxed. Once she was comfortable, I climbed in after her. The bubbles made it easy to glide my hands along her arms and legs. I began to worry that she might doze off, so I helped her out of the tub and watched as she showed me how to drain it. Then we stepped into the dryer together. It felt a bit awkward, and since the dryer wasn't very good, we decided to dry off separately. Afterward, I took Mary's hand and led her back to the bed. She waited while I cleaned up our things. After putting everything back in the wardrobe, I returned to the bed and saw Mary putting her clothes back on. "Mary?" I asked. She turned to me with a smile. "I thought you were going to bed." I felt a little uncertain. "Mary, I hoped you would stay the night with me, but if you want to go." Before I could finish, she adjusted her skirt. I gently took her hand and guided her onto my bed. She settled on the far side, and I climbed in next to her. It felt strange. I'd shared a bed with someone for years, but now I felt nervous with Mary here. I turned off the lights and reached for her. When my hand touched her shoulder, she moved closer to me, and I couldn't help but smile as she snuggled against my chest. "Your heart is beating fast," she said softly. I took a breath to calm myself and held her closer. I wanted to look into her eyes. "I'm nervous," I admitted quietly. Mary laughed softly, and her smile gave me confidence. "What do you have to be nervous about?" "Because I'm in love with you." "What?" "Mary, I've followed you to the kitchen every day since I first heard you. The day I found you in trouble made me very angry. Please marry me." "What? Master? Mary, my dear friend, please be my wife?" Mary sniffled, then lay down on me and rested her head on my shoulder. The moment I felt her tremble with quiet tears, I wrapped her in my arms. I could feel warm tears soaking my shoulder. Honestly, I wasn't sure what to do next. She hadn't pushed me away, but she was crying and still close to me. "Mary, I need to know how you feel," I said softly. She lifted her head from my chest and looked into my eyes. I noticed her bright smile, even with her eyes still red from crying. "Master, when I'm here like this, please call me your devoted one. I'm yours forever, Master. I love you so much. Please hold me close always." Before I could fully react, she moved in and rested her forehead against mine. Inside, I felt a rush of happiness wash over me. But then I noticed how vulnerable she seemed, and she seemed to sense it too, as she pulled away slightly. "Master," she said with a sniffle, teasingly, "it seems you have a little problem." I just smiled. "Well, maybe you can help with that." Her eyes lit up as she stepped closer. "Master, James, I love you." I felt my heart swell as we shared that moment. This felt important, a special connection between us. I gently held her, feeling warmth. She stroked her hair back and took a few deep breaths. "Master, please, I'm almost there." I smiled back. "How many children do you see in our future?" She paused and thought for a moment. Master as many as you want, but at least two, a boy and a girl. That sounds wonderful, I said, sharing a gentle kiss with her, and I could feel her excitement in the moment. We embraced, feeling joyful and connected. Afterward, she smiled, holding on to the nice feeling we had just shared. I remembered being 16 a long time ago. I held Mary close, and she smiled back at me. After the wedding, we'll start dreaming about our future together, I said softly. Her bright smile stuck with me, bringing comfort. I hoped to always deserve the trust and love she showed me. Later, when I woke up, I saw that Mary was already up and getting ready for the day. She turned to me and smiled. "Good morning." "Good morning," I replied, feeling happy to share that quiet moment with her. As Mary started to leave, she looked back and said, "I'll bring breakfast when it's ready." I sat up and smiled. "Let's make it together. I want to help too." Mary paused, her eyes shining with emotion. She came over and gave me a warm hug. "Thank you," she whispered, clearly moved. I gave her a gentle kiss on the forehead to reassure her. "We're a team, Mary, always." She smiled through her tears, showing me how much this moment meant to her. We stood in silence for a little while, both of us feeling the strength of our connection. As Mary finished getting ready, I grinned and said, "And yes, you can keep some of your things here. This is your home too." With that, we felt ready to face the day, knowing we would support each other. "But as my future wife, I'd like you to stay close." I gently touched her head as she sniffled a bit, knowing she was okay. Mary smiled quickly and then left. Once I had dressed, I headed for the kitchen and was surprised to find only Kenneth there. "Good morning. I'm not sure where Mary is today. She's usually on time," he said earnestly. I thought for a moment and smiled. "My fiancée is probably just getting ready. I'll start without her." About half a minute later, Kenneth looked surprised and said, "Fiancée?" I turned back to see his shock just as Mary walked in and noticed him staring. "Sir?" "James, Mary. You don't need to call me sir in front of others." Mary smiled and came into my arms, softly saying, "I love you." "Wow," Kenneth whispered. Mary and I laughed together and continued our morning. I couldn't help but smile as Mary hummed a cheerful tune. Every time I turned to hand something to Kenneth, he looked amazed. This continued as I pushed the cart filled with food into the dining room where the staff was gathered, talking among themselves. A few smiled and greeted me as I helped set the table. Once I finished, I reached for Mary's hand and she took it without hesitation. I led her to 2 empty seats and pulled out her chair. She blushed as I gave her a gentle kiss on the cheek before sitting down. That's when I noticed the room had gone quiet and everyone was looking at us. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my future wife, Miss Matthews," I said, holding Mary's hand. The room was silent for a few seconds until Frank broke the quiet by starting to clap. Soon, everyone joined in. I smiled as I held Mary's hand while she tried to hide her face, though her joy was clear. The rest of the meal went on as usual. Once the excitement cooled down, conversations flowed and we enjoyed the meal. Throughout, Mary and I sat quietly, holding hands. After the meal, I helped carry the dishes back to the kitchen, shared a sweet moment with Mary, and then went to find Frank. A couple of hours later, Frank left my office with a list of changes for the property. The first was about making room for the helicopter. The second was about improvements for the dining room and staff living areas. As I looked through my emails, I heard a knock on the door. Before I could answer, Cassandra walked in. She looked a bit worried, even nervous. "Cassandra, are you okay?" I asked her. She shook her head and sat down in the chair Frank had just left. "I never had a chance with you, did I?" I closed my eyes and shook my head slowly. "Honestly, no, you didn't. You're lovely, truly. But I've been hurt before, and I felt you weren't completely honest about wanting me. Besides, it's not me you really want, is it?" Cassandra turned pale and shook her head. "Greg is the lucky one." "What?" Cassandra looked shocked. I sighed. "I wasn't asleep on that couch." "Well, I was, but I woke up when you started talking." Cassandra groaned and covered her face with her hands. "Don't worry, I like Greg. He seems like a good man. Just make sure you have someone to fill in when you take time off to marry him." Cassandra rolled her eyes. "After all this?" She sighed and looked up at me. "Just promise you'll take care of my sister." Cassandra, I promise I will love, protect, and care for your sister for as long as I live, I said, placing my hand over my heart. Cassandra smiled and stood up, nervously twisting her fingers. Can I have a hug? I stood and walked around the desk. Opening my arms, Cassandra stepped into my hug and I held her gently. Is this what you wanted? I asked softly. I never had a brother, she said. It's nice to have family again. I smiled and let her pull away. Cassandra paused before adding, I forgot to tell you, I approved the purchase of the helicopter. I was thinking of buying a new one, but that would take too long, and this is easier for getting to Mary's court hearing. I frowned. When is that? The helicopter or the hearing? Both, I chuckled. The helicopter should arrive tomorrow. The pilot is staying over, and we'll fly back to town the next day for the hearing, Cassandra said quickly. I nodded my thanks as she left. It was good that things were moving so fast. Sitting back at my desk, I started scrolling through my emails. Most were just updates from the companies I owned, but one at the bottom made me pause. My dearest James, it's been so long since I've heard from you. Not a day goes by that I don't regret how things ended between us. I never meant what I said, and I hope you know that. That's why I dropped the lawsuit. I still care for you, James, and I would like to try again. We can be together once more. We were happy before, and we can be happy again. Just give me another chance to show you how much I care. Always yours, Michelle Matthews. So that's all, Ben said with a smile to Cooper, the new on-site guard. Ben took a step towards the door when an alarm rang from the computer. He quickly turned to find out where the noise was coming from. The main office window, he whispered to himself. Let's go. Ben pulled Cooper and hurried to the office. When they got there, they found James sitting at his desk, looking at the broken window with glass all around. Ben entered carefully, ready for anything, but saw that James seemed lost in his thoughts, looking at the mess. Sir, are you all right? Ben asked, worry in his voice. James looked up, his face tight with frustration. Just then, Mary rushed in, her face showing concern. James, she said, hurrying to his side. James's expression softened as she hugged him, providing comfort. Ben glanced at Cooper. We'll do introductions later. It's almost lunchtime anyway. You can meet everyone then. Are you okay? Mary asked softly, searching for reassurance. I looked into her eyes, taking a moment to gather my thoughts. I care about you, I said, my voice steady. Mary smiled and held my hand, bringing warmth. Whatever is bothering you, we'll face it together. Taking a breath, I tried to let go of the tension. I won't let this get to me, I said, feeling calmer. Mary smiled again, her support steady. Take your time. We'll talk about it when you are ready. Together, we stepped away from the mess, allowing ourselves a moment of calm. With Mary beside me, I felt ready for whatever came next. I hugged her gently. I'm sorry, I said softly. What's wrong? Mary asked, looking puzzled. Mary, if you want me to be more confident, I'll do that. If you need a stronger presence from me, I'm here for that too. I just don't want my stress to spill over onto you. I care about you. Mary looked a bit worried. But you weren't hurting me. I just need to feel a bit more control sometimes. It's something I really want. I understand, I said with a smile. That's why I want to help you in these moments. I appreciate your willingness. I want to support you. I touched her cheek lightly, letting the moment last a little. So, I'll sit down and you can show me what you can do. I took a seat. Almost immediately, Mary settled in comfortably next to me. I smiled as she did. Is this all right? She asked playfully as she began to move closer. I playfully nudged her, making her gasp lightly. You're wonderful, I said, keeping a steady tone as Mary helped me feel better. If you want to make this more of a challenge, I have ideas, Mary suggested with a grin. That thought filled me with joy. Even as I found comfort, Mary made sure everything felt right, keeping me at ease. As things settled down, I gently held her in my arms. So what happened? Mary asked, running her fingers through my hair. My ex-wife wants to get back together, I replied honestly. I didn't want to keep anything from her. Mary continued to stroke my hair without pausing. Did you respond before checking your laptop? I chuckled. No, I didn't. I hardly understood it at first. By the time I thought about it again, I was so upset that I forgot all about it. I didn't mean for it to be thrown out the window. There wasn't anyone outside, was there? Mary leaned over to peek out. No, everything was taken care of yesterday. The lawn was mowed and the hedges trimmed the day before. I smiled, feeling warm and safe with her. In that moment, I realized I wanted to marry her. No matter what was happening, I found peace here, in her gentle company. Come on, you should change clothes and maybe freshen up, I said with a light laugh. I handed her my shirt as she adjusted her skirt. It was clear that things had been busy, but at least she was okay. I'll wash up in my old room. I haven't brought any clothes upstairs yet, she said quickly, giving me a kiss on my cheek. I watched as she quickly went to the door and opened it. Her reaction was to freeze when she saw someone on the other side. After a moment, she hurried out of the room. Soon after, Cassandra walked in, looking around with curiosity. James, she said, looking me over. I raised my hands. It was her idea. Everything was mutual. Just ask her. I won't get in the way. Cassandra noticed the mess on the floor. I might just do that. So, about the window? I nodded. My ex-wife sent me an email. She wants to reconcile. Cassandra let out a small laugh, trying to hide it with a cough, but couldn't stop smiling. I guess the window got in the way of your response? Pretty much, I said with a grumble. Cassandra shook her head. You're lucky we have supplies around. If we had to order a window, it would take days to replace. Just don't make a habit of it. Whenever we get glass, some of it always ends up broken. Got it, I replied with a chuckle. Now, unless you need something else, I'm heading for a shower. Cassandra wrinkled her nose at me and left. This time, my laughter faded. My ex wanting to get back wasn't really an option. It hadn't been before, and now with Mary. She had shown me that she could be quite strong if she needed to be. I needed to think of a way to handle this. An hour later, I was in the kitchen eating a late lunch with Mary. We had missed the main meal, so Mary had quickly made something. From what I could tell, it was some sort of quince dish. Other than eggs, onions, and tomatoes, I couldn't identify much else. The meat tasted somewhat like ham, but with spices. It also came from a local container, which meant it was fresh. Either way, it was delicious. I had been told that I couldn't go back to my office for the rest of the day. A new laptop was being set up for me with all my files from the old one. Ben was in charge of getting everything transferred. That evening, Mary and I just took it easy together. I wasn't really up for anything else. Mary seemed happy to spend the evening with me. Her caring nature was a bit overwhelming. The next morning, I woke up to find Mary still in my arms. She had a gentle way of waking me. "Good morning," she said softly as my eyes opened. I pulled her closer to me and said, "I love you." Mary made a little sound and I smiled, holding her tightly. "Don't you need to get up?" I asked. Mary shook her head. "Frank and Cassandra said I could take today, tomorrow, and maybe the next day off." "Really?" "Today for you, tomorrow for a court appearance, and the next day just in case I need it," she explained. I sighed. "You don't have to take a day off for me, Mary. You can do what you want." "That's great to hear, because what I want is for you to stay by my side as we face this together," she said, her voice steady. I pulled her close, giving her the support she needed. "I've always been here for you," I said softly. In court, Mary spoke calmly. After the incident, Mr. Matthews stepped in. There was a short struggle, but he managed to handle the situation and brought me to safety. The lawyer asked, "Did the defendant receive any medical care?" "Yes," Mary answered. "Mr. Matthews made sure he was safe before looking for help. We then met Frank and the security team who took over." Suddenly, the young man shouted angrily, making accusations. "You're lying! You're just covering for him!" The judge quickly quieted him down. Mary gathered herself and continued confidently, "What I choose to do with my life is none of your business." As the court discussed the case, the atmosphere was tense, but it was clear that Mary's strength shone through. The verdict came back. Guilty. The defendant was given community service, and Mary finally felt some relief. After leaving the courtroom, we held hands as we walked. Mary's calmness began to fade as we reached the hotel, and once inside, her emotions came out. I held her close while she cried, comforting her after the stress of the trial. "You're safe now," I whispered gently, helping her feel secure after everything she had gone through. She took a deep breath, slowly finding her strength again. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice full of appreciation. We stood there together, knowing that no matter what came next, we would face it side by side. Mary stood in front of me, clearly upset, her voice shaking as she spoke. I didn't expect them to ask so many personal questions. It made me feel exposed, embarrassed. I stepped closer to comfort her. "Mary, you're strong. You faced it all head on." Her eyes were filled with doubt, so I continued. "Today I saw a brave woman rise above something difficult. You've come out of this stronger, and you don't need to carry the weight of what others have done." Mary nodded, her eyes wet with tears, but I could see her strength returning. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. It had been 3 months since Mary agreed to marry me. Life had its ups and downs, but we were working through it together. We had disagreements, especially about her wanting to keep working. I understood her need for independence, so we found a way to make it work by hiring extra help when needed. Over time, our relationship had grown deeper. We made sure to talk openly, always supporting each other in the choices we made. Whether it was handling the house or planning for the future, we faced it all as a team. Tomorrow was our wedding day, and there was a sense of excitement in the air. We decided to take the day off and enjoy some quiet time before all the celebrations began. As we prepared for the next chapter, I knew that whatever came our way, we'd face it together. Mary always found comfort in setting clear boundaries, and we worked hard to respect that. Today was no different, though our trust in each other had grown even stronger. She relaxed, feeling completely secure as we enjoyed the calming sounds we had chosen together. She held a small item in her hand, a signal we had agreed on, giving her control whenever she needed it. I moved quietly around her, noticing how calm and steady her breathing was. The peaceful sound in the background, along with the stillness of the room, made the moment feel serene. It was about trust, connection, and understanding. As I stood by her side, I checked everything, making sure it was just right. There was no hurry, only patience, as I focused on keeping her comfortable and at ease. We had worked hard to build this foundation of respect and care. Today reminded me of the deep bond we shared, rooted in mutual trust. The simple moments like this, filled with peace, were what we both cherished. With everything in place, I stayed focused on making sure she felt safe and supported, knowing that our connection was built on trust and understanding. Just a moment later, she started to shake with excitement. An hour later, I gently placed her on her bed. Part of me wanted to keep her in my room for the night, but I knew it would cause problems later with Cassandra. I had heard about a difficult bride, but I wasn't prepared for a challenging sister-in-law. She had taken charge of everything. The dress, cake, flowers, guest list. It was all up to her. Mary and I just went along with her choices. As long as Mary was happy, I didn't mind too much. So, with a soft touch to my sleeping beauty, I returned to my own bed. Knock, knock. I squinted as the morning light came in. Yep. The door opened a little and Cassandra peeked in. Oh, good. Mary's in her room then? Yep, I replied, sinking back into my pillows. No, get up. You need to shower and dress in an hour. It snowed last night, just like I wanted, so we'll get some amazing morning pictures of you and Mary. I groaned and pulled the sheet over me. I'm not ready. Cassandra raised an eyebrow. I'm leaving now. I'll be back in 5 minutes. If you're not in that shower, I'll make it interesting. I couldn't help but chuckle. We had moved past our old issues. Now she really was the little sister I never had. I also knew Greg was going to propose while on the honeymoon. I had planned a skiing trip for Mary and me, just in time for the season. Winter had just started, and the popular spots were lively with snow. I booked an entire resort, with hot tubs and its own ski lift. I even hired a security team to look after things during the wedding, the honeymoon, and the house for the month I planned to be away. Everyone was looking forward to it. All right, I'm getting up, I promise, I said with a grin. Cassandra nodded and quickly left. By the time I got out of the shower, my bed was made and my suit was laid out. It was simple and nice. As long as the pictures came out well and Mary was happy, I had no complaints. After dressing, I left the bedroom and found Frank waiting for me. Come here, sir, he said, holding up a comb. Frank, just stop it or you won't get that raise, I replied with a frown. James, sorry, it's a wedding. With so many people, it's hard to keep everything organized. I rolled my eyes as Frank styled my hair and pinned a rose to my pocket. While all this happened, a young man dashed around taking pictures of me and everyone else. I tried to ignore him. As Frank finally finished with me, Kenneth handed me a drink. I thanked him and made my way downstairs. It felt a bit strange. The staff were all friends of Mary and mine, so we had to hire extra staff to help with the wedding. As an added bonus, military members stopped by for the event, some leaders and close family of the staff. It seemed many of my staff maintained long-distance relationships, which was something I wanted to address. I wanted my team to be happy, and if that meant making things easier for them, I would do what I could to help. I finished my drink as I walked by the warm indoor pool, but the real excitement was happening outside on the patio. Just as Cassandra mentioned, it had snowed overnight. Space heaters had been set up to keep the area warm enough for the wedding, creating a lovely atmosphere. As I stepped outside, most guests followed and started to take their seats. For a wedding planned so well, it was surprising how relaxed we were about it. The guests had arrived in the morning, but there was no specific time for the ceremony. Cassandra was with Mary, coordinating everything, and we would begin when we were ready. Since we had paid for the day, timing was not an issue. Frank was even the one leading the ceremony. As I walked down the aisle, I took in the sight of all the smiling guests. It reminded me of my own wedding, which was also filled with smiles, but there had been quite a bit of politics. My parents were just happy to see me joyful, while her family saw it as a chance to network. I actually lost a few friends that day. I reached the altar just as Frank arrived with Ben and Cassandra. Ben took his place as my best man, and Cassandra looked at me closely. "You'll do," she said with a grin. I rolled my eyes playfully. "Come on," Frank said softly, but I could see he was amused. The low sound of music brought the room to silence. I smiled at the meaning behind "In the Arms of an Angel" playing in the background. When Mary came into view, I couldn't hold back my tears. She wore a lovely white dress that covered her from head to toe, and a veil that barely hid her smile. The roses she carried matched the one on my suit. She walked slowly as photographers captured the moment. I kept my eyes on the woman I loved, trying not to feel too emotional. When she finally reached the altar, she stood across from me as Frank spoke softly. The whole time he spoke, I was captivated by my bride. The wedding was a wonderful event filled with joy and feelings. As I stood at the altar, lost in the moment, I almost missed my turn to say, "I do." Ben had to give me a gentle nudge to bring me back to reality. When Frank announced us as husband and wife, I lifted Mary's veil carefully. Happy tears rolled down her cheeks, just like mine. I cupped her face gently, brushing her cheek before leaning in to kiss her. Everything around us blurred as we stood together, wrapped in our moment. There were cheers and applause, but all I could focus on was my wife. The celebration lasted well into the night, filled with laughter, delicious food, and just enough fun to make it a day to remember. Guests stayed in the rooms we had set up, and even the catering staff joined in the excitement. As the evening went on, Greg asked Cassandra to marry him, which added to the happy mood. Later, as the night grew quieter, I turned to Mary with a smile. "How do you feel?" I asked her softly. She smiled back, her eyes shining with joy. "I'm fine, dear," she replied gently. I chuckled at her calling me that. "Dear, huh?" I teased lightly. She beamed even brighter, filled with happiness, and we shared a peaceful moment together. This was the start of our life as partners, and our connection felt stronger than ever. The day had been full of joy and celebration, and as the evening came to a close, we were still wrapped up in the emotions from our wedding. Mary and I stood together, our bond stronger than ever. She smiled at me, her eyes sparkling. "How are you feeling?" I asked her gently. She grinned and said softly, "I'm great, dear." I laughed at her using that word, knowing how much it meant for us to finally be together as a married couple. We shared a quiet moment, and I held her close, enjoying the comfort of being with the one I loved. As the night went on, we chatted about our future, the promises we had made, and the life we would build together. The laughter and happiness of the day still filled our hearts as we both felt thankful for the love that had brought us here. The hardships we faced before felt far away, and all that mattered now was our journey ahead as a team, ready to tackle whatever came our way. The wedding day had been a whirlwind of feelings, and as the night came to an end, Mary and I took a moment to think about our future together. We both knew how much our lives had changed, and our bond felt unbreakable. She smiled, her eyes full of love and joy. The night had been filled with laughter and meaningful moments, but now it was just the two of us. "I love you, Mary," I whispered softly. She nodded gently, her feelings overwhelming her. The future looked bright, and we were ready to embrace it together. Meanwhile, Michelle Matthews sat at her computer drafting another email. Months had passed since her life had taken a new turn, and things had not gone as she had hoped. She realized that she had left behind a life that seemed much more satisfying than the one she had now. The man she thought would be a better match had turned out to be different. He no longer prioritized her, and she found herself missing the stability she once had. She knew she couldn't change what happened before, and all she had now were the results of her choices. Michelle spent her days cooking and cleaning while he went out with friends and enjoyed his weekends away from home. As she typed loving words on her computer, a loud knock on the front door caught her attention. With a tired sigh, she sent the email and got up to see who it was. When she opened the door, a man stood there with a bunch of flowers. Feeling a bit surprised, she looked at the delivery driver. "Mrs. Matthews?" he asked. But yes," Michelle answered. The man nodded, trying not to sigh, and said, "Please sign here." Michelle quickly signed and frowned as he handed her a small box along with the flowers. She stepped back and closed the door behind her. In the kitchen, she placed the flowers on the table and took a closer look at the box. Her heart raced a little as she read the note on top. "To the woman of my dreams, James," was written there. A smile spread across Michelle's face as she opened the box. Inside, she found 2 envelopes and a DVD. The first envelope had a note saying, "Read me first," decorated with a small heart. Recognizing the handwriting, she smiled and opened it. Inside was a simple message. "My dearest Michelle, please watch the DVD I sent you. It would mean so much if you did so before opening the final envelope. With all my heart, James." Feeling excited, Michelle put the DVD in the player and pressed play. The screen was dark for a moment, then music started to play. She smiled because it was a song she loved, and it made her happy that he thought of her. As the music filled the room, pictures appeared. Flowers, a wedding dress, James smiling. Michelle's heart filled with hope for what she thought would be a sweet message of love. But then she felt a sudden sadness as a cheerful young woman appeared next to him. Her heart sank as she watched the video, realizing the depth of his feelings for her. Tears fell as she picked up the last envelope. With shaky hands, she opened it to find 2 papers. One was a voucher for counseling, and the other was an ultrasound image from just 2 weeks ago.